Morning, folks. So, I don't know what's going on YouTube. Morning, Annette. Morning, Tiam. Judy, morning. Right, so I have no clue what's happening on YouTube. It says that I'm live, so okay. Yeah, so just give me 1 sec, folks. Okay. Right. Now it seems to be working. Morning, Carol. Carol Myers, J. Dimples, Bruce, morning to you. Dave Emmanuel, morning. Gemma Wallace, Deborah Edgehill, morning to you guys. Ruth Fontaine, morning. Sally, McNeil O'Connor, morning to you. Alison Boyce, morning. Alison. Gemma, morning. Angela Cato, morning. Phyllis Antoine, morning to you. Celestine Joseph, Joycelyn Small White, morning to all of you guys. Yeah, so I'm seeing persons popping up now. I don't know what happened with the YouTube stream this morning because it wasn't giving me the option to set up the way I normally do. Sun and rain. Carol sent some rain my way now because there's only sun on this side. And I know we're not living that far from each other. So if we could just send a little bit of rain on this side, that'd be great. I think it's just a little overcast, but yeah, no rain. Don Joseph, morning. Andel George, Kenneth Gabriel, Winston Jones, morning to all of you guys. Alicia Almande Roche, morning. Marva James, morning. Marva. Rudolph Barnett, morning to you. Good morning to His Excellency, President of Pleasantville, Nigel O'Connor, First Lady Mauricia Kagan. Morning, Deborah. Rosemary Hadley, morning to you. Jennifer Nathan, Eva Smith Spivey, Adriana Alexis, morning to all of you. Let me see who's on YouTube. Morning to my YouTube people. Neil Francois, morning to you, sir. Winston Jones, Deborah Duranty, Daniela Williams, morning, guys. Morning, Roxanne. Thank you for my brooms, as always. The Patriot, morning, Marlene Pantin. Christopher Sylvester, morning, Margaret Thomas. Morning, Sedena. Daniela, Cyril. Morning to all of you guys. Natalie F, morning to you. Trevor Carter Nelson, morning. Shah, morning to you. Felix Hospitalis, morning, sir. Angie Sherry, morning, Angie. Wanda Joseph. Pat McKenzie, Dexter Tweets, morning. Earl Tip and Rena. Morning, Rena and Mikkel. Morning, Alison Samuel, and Marie Montique. Morning to all of you guys. Let's do the sun silent. Right, it is 11:22. I feel I need to. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. I was going to say switch to 11:15, but this morning was another one of those mornings. Suzette Jackie, morning, Suzette. Emmeline Harvey, Veronica Jack, morning. Patches Bailey, morning, Patches. Dementry McEwen, morning to you. Right, so let me just get into it one time. Hopefully I'll be able to touch on all the things that I wanted to touch on today. So, let me start by saying birthday greetings to anybody who is celebrating a birthday today. I didn't see anything pop up on Facebook, but then again, I'm not friends with everybody who tunes in. So for those of you who may be celebrating a birthday to you on behalf of the admins of FAXA Stubborn Things and Debunking, birthday greetings to you. David Clark, morning to you. Right. So many things happened this past week. So I'll deal with the most recent, go back. So on Friday, there was a bill debated in the House, the lower house, the constitutional amendment bill, which sought to make a simple, very, very simple, to my mind, inconsequential amendment to the Constitution, which is to amend the way in which persons are appointed to act as police commissioner in the absence of the substantive commissioner. So the government was simply seeking to kind of reduce the bureaucracy in the process as it currently exists, because under the current system, in order for the Police Service Commission to appoint someone to act as Commissioner of Police, coming out of what would have happened with Gary Griffith, when his term as Commissioner, his substantive term ended and he was appointed to act in the position. What the Police Service Commission would have done would have simply to put out a notice indicating that Mr. Griffith would have been acting in the position. And such notification was not sent to the Parliament. As a result of that, it created an opening, a door for Anand Ramlogan to his lackey, Ravi Bhargava Maharaj, to challenge Gary Griffith's acting appointment. Based on the manner in which it was done, Mr. Ramlogan went to court, and Justice Nadia Kangalu agreed with his arguments that Gary Griffith's appointment to act was null and void and of no effect because it wasn't done in the manner that it should have been done as prescribed by the Constitution, which is that the Police Service Commission has to send the name to the President. The President then has to send the notification to the Parliament. Then the Parliament must now meet to debate it. So, based on what we've seen in the past, either the Prime Minister or the Minister of National Security would read the notification, indicate the name of the person, read out the person's curriculum vitae, all of the, how many ever pages it is, and then make a recommendation and so on. And then somebody on the opposition side would respond and say whether or not they agree, if they don't agree. And we saw it recently with the most recent appointment of Ms. Suzette Martin to the position of Deputy Commissioner of Police. And the opposition had an issue with it. The key issue that they had, two of the main issues they had with her appointment was one, that she was one of the officers involved in the Brent Thomas matter. And I think there was another issue involving where apparently she was involved in a what they call an RTA, a routine traffic accident, in which, on the bus route, if memory serves me correctly, in which she would have injured a teenager. I think she was at the wheel and she would have come into contact with a young man. And I think she was subsequently charged for that, right? But other aspects, but aside from that, she is eminently qualified based on. Anyway, so the government was seeking to amend the Constitution to avoid all of that lacquery and all that bureaucracy. And simply, if Ulla Christopher, or whoever is the Commissioner of Police, for whatever reason, is unable to carry out the functions of Commissioner of Police for whatever time period, that the Police Service Commission can simply, as they did in the case of Gary Griffith, make the appointment, send out whatever notification and announce that it's right, instead of having to send it into Parliament, debate and all that. Even if it is this person just going to be acting for one day. It took a full debate, because I saw Monilal talk, Kamla talk, I think Saddam Hussein spoke, and whoever else, right? All of that. At the end of the day, because it's a constitutional amendment, it requires a 2/3 majority, which means the government, which doesn't have the numbers, require the support of the opposition in order for the amendment to pass. And we know ever since the government would have launched this constitutional reform committee that is currently going around the country doing consultations and so on, the UNC has made it perfectly and abundantly clear they have no intentions of supporting any constitutional amendment brought by this administration, regardless of how consequential or inconsequential it is. So on Friday, as is to be expected, after they come and talk a mile and a half of, when it came time to vote, they voted no. Right? All of them, 18 of them, voted no. They didn't abstain, they said no, right, and they're happy. And when the speaker would have announced the results, I think it was 21 persons on the government side voted in favor, 18 on the opposition bench voted no. So the bill was not carried because they didn't get the 2/3 majority that it was required. Subsequent to that, the leader of the opposition announced that the opposition scored a major victory for the citizens of this country, because they would have protected parliamentary oversight in the process of the appointment or the acting appointment of a commissioner of police. I want you all to understand there's a difference. I've always said I don't like to call them the opposition. They are an obstruction. Because when it is that you could come and debate, stand up and talk for 45 minutes, right? And then vote no on something so, to my mind, inconsequential, tells me you're not serious. You're not about governance. So you're not about opposing for on the basis of sense. You are about opposing simply for the sake of opposing because you don't get too many victories. So the few that you could eke out, we will take it. Right? And then come and make a big announcement about you scored a major victory for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to remind the opposition, you all speak for 19 constituencies, right? 19. The People's National Movement speaks for 22. They speak for the majority of constituencies. So, albeit that 21 persons would have been present to vote on the matter on the government side, they still speak for 22 constituencies, the majority of the population. In fact, UNC loves to boast that they got 309,000 votes in the last general election, and they speak for 309,000. Well, the PNM, based on the amount of votes that they got, speak for at least 322,000. Still more than what you all represent. So when you say you scored a major victory, no, you scored a victory for the constituents that you represent. You didn't score any victory for the country, right? Because 22 of the constituencies don't agree with you and your position on that matter, which is simple, a simple matter. Now, anybody could tell me, and I'm speaking here to the persons who are partial to that other party. That makes sense? A simple thing. The Police Service Commission, the government is saying, we don't need to go down this. If it is, for whatever reason, somebody needs to act as commissioner of police, if it's for 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, whatever, that we don't need to go through the process that the PSC had to send the name to the president, and the president had to send notification to the parliament, and then we had to call the parliament just to debate that. It makes no sense for the simple reason that if the commissioner is unable to perform her duties or his duties, depending on for whatever period of time, if it is that they had to leave the country, they're going to a conference or they're on vacation or whatever, the first port of call that the Police Service Commission is going to go to find somebody to act is the DCP pool, the 3 deputy commissioners of police. All 3 names have already come to the parliament. All 3 names, the curriculum vitae for all 3 of them has already been ventilated in the parliament. They've been read out, they were debated, and they were selected. These are the 3 deputy commissioners of police. Why would you want to go through the convoluted process that if one of them is to act for a day or 2, that you need to go through the whole process to send a name to the president and to come to the parliament and convene the parliament just to deal with that issue? When you could just do what had existed years before, and we had no issue with it. Back in the days of Trevor Paul and James Philbert and all of these guys, that is what used to happen. Whoever was the next person below them would just be appointed to act. They didn't have to come. So when I hear the UNC talking about we need scrutiny and we need transparency, what scrutiny and what transparency? So you want to bring the matter to parliament because you figure since these 3 persons being appointed as deputy commissioners, that what they would have committed some acts that you need to come to the parliament and talk about. Otherwise, as it currently stands, all that is going to happen, you're just going to repeat the process. To come and read the CV again, and then what? So the Minister of National Security will read the CV and say what he had to say, and then Munilal will get up and do what? Rehash? So when I hear them saying, well, under the amendment that the government was bringing, you didn't have to, if the opportunity presented itself for somebody to act, it didn't have to be the most senior of the 3 deputy commissioners. They could put any of the 3. So if it is that the government wants, even though the Police Service Commission is an independent commission, and they make the decision, they don't have to pick up the phone and call the Prime Minister and call whoever and say, well, we want to put this person, you agree? That is not how it works. They make their recommendation, it comes to Parliament, and the Parliament disagrees. They say, well, okay, we don't want this person to act. Send the next person. But they say, in case they want to bypass whoever is the most senior of the 3, and put Suzette Martin to act, they have a problem with that. But the fact is, if the Police Service Commission in their wisdom feel that Suzette Martin is the best person to act at that point in time, and they send that name to the parliament, regardless of whatever the UNC, what issues they have, Suzette Martin will act. Because it is the government has the majority of votes and will just say, all right, all 21 or 22 of us will vote for her. And so what is the point of this exercise? Just to give you all an opportunity to come in the parliament and put it on record to bad talk the woman and talk again about Brent Thomas and Brent Thomas and Brent Thomas. And how Susan Martin was partying and she kidnapped Brent Thomas and all of that foolishness. And that making sense to them. So something as simple as that, they had to make an issue of. No, we don't support it. Right? So they didn't support. The motion is defeated. So therefore, going forward, as is the process now, I think next month, Ulla Christopher her extension is supposed to come to an end. We don't know what would happen after that, whether it is because the Police Service Commission only recently started advertising the position. And the process of vetting any applicants and so on, it's a tedious process because of all the different steps that they have to go through. So it's very unlikely that a substantive commissioner of police would be appointed prior to or in time for Ulla Christopher's for the expiration of her extension. So they could either give her, if the government so approves, give her another extension or appoint one of the 3 deputy commissioners to act, as was the case when McDonald Jacobs' term came to an end. And rather than extend, they put Ulla Christopher to act, and then she was subsequently appointed to the position. Right? Now tell me if that makes sense. Isn't that a waste of Parliament's time? A process that we were accustomed to for years, that nobody had any issue with. The government is saying we want to bring back that. Because what currently obtains makes no sense, all that bureaucracy. And the head of the Police Social and Welfare Association, Gideon Dixon, is very upset with the outcome of that vote. Because he is saying why it is the process to simply appoint somebody to act in a position had to be so bureaucratic and convoluted. Why? He says to appoint somebody to act as chief of defense staff, you don't have to go through that headache. To appoint somebody to act as the commissioner of prisons, no, you don't have to go through that headache. To appoint somebody to act as the chief fire officer, you don't have to go through that headache. Somebody to act in the regiment, you don't have to go. It's only the police service has this set of convoluted stupidness that PSC put a name, sent a merit list, and it had to go to the president and the parliament. And he's saying, to what end? What's the sense in that? It making no sense. Any other position in the public service, if the person is to act, you don't have to go through that. You understand, no, but the police, you have to go through that. And you UNC talking nonsense about transparency. Really? Just to oppose because you're so desperate for some kind of victory over the government. Is the one opportunity, because normally most of the bills that come to the parliament, the government would have the majority to pass it, or they would remove whatever clauses need to be removed so that they wouldn't need a special majority. So the one where they have no choice and they can't do anything because it's a constitutional amendment. And then Saddam Hussein, who is part of the future of the UNC, one of the future leaders of the UNC. I listened to a little bit of his submission to the debate. And he is saying, well, you know, this is a constitutional amendment and the government have a committee right now that is doing consultations. So why didn't you wait for the committee to finish its work to see if that is a recommendation, and you have no respect for your committee and so on? This is something that is required now. This is something that is needed now, Saddam. This consultation is going to go on for a little bit longer, and then the committee has to meet and put together the report and submit it to the cabinet, and then it will be laid in parliament and all of that. The government is saying we need to do something now to treat with this issue. But the silly arguments that they come with, just to eke out a little, that is a victory for them. They consider that a victory. We see that for what it is. Another act of obstruction and playing smart with foolishness. And anybody who's supporting them on that nonsense, all they need a checkup from the neck up. Because you can't tell me that that's so important. That it's not to say it's different names. It's 3 people. It's only 3 people they will choose from. The same 3 people every time. The parliament has already approved these 3 people as deputy commissioners of police. Substantive. They're not acting. That is their post. That is their work. They have been vetted by the parliament. It was debated on, and that is their position. So those are the 3 people we're going to. Why it is you need to come back to the parliament again to rehash the same name. To go through the CV again and go through a process that we went through. So every bloody time. So if it is in the next 8 months, the commissioner of police, you need to appoint a DCP to act 4 times. We need to come to the parliament 4 times to debate just to appoint somebody who has already been vetted by the parliament. And that making sense to them. But as I said, when you're desperate for a victory, you will cling to anything. Come in and talking nonsense, just score a major victory for the population. Really? How so? Because you have a problem with one of the deputy commissioners of police? Hmm? When it was Mr. Lucas' name, they had issue with Mr. Lucas too, and the government didn't support Mr. Lucas's nomination. Monilala and them was the same one who come talking about, well, we know Lucas is the preferred choice, and we expect that when it is Ila Christopher's term comes to an end in May, that more than likely they're going to appoint Mr. Lucas to act in the position until a substantive commissioner is appointed. That's what he said. So imagine his surprise after he come and talk that janjat in the parliament, because he know he bright. The government didn't support Mr. Lucas's nomination. And then Munilal was befuddled and bewildered. What happened there? But I thought I understood the play. I thought I understood the score, but they make me look stupid. Wouldn't be the first time, Munilal. And I'm sure I tell it wouldn't be the last. So let's come at another conspiracy theory. Right? Never a dull moment with these people were, but put them back. Yes, they have the answers. So the other issue, another issue that came up of, the Prime Minister would have announced that a name change to the Emancipation holiday from just Emancipation to African Emancipation Day to solidify that it is in fact African emancipation, right? And he would have indicated that you have people out there who are now seeking to try and jump on the bandwagon and piggyback on emancipation, persons who are not of African descent. And so to make it lucidly clear, at least in Trinidad and Tobago, that August 1st is dedicated to African emancipation, and not what would subsequently probably come out in other jurisdictions where we will hear that Emancipation Day encompasses not just persons of African descent, but of other ethnic backgrounds as well. Right? So the cabinet took that decision. And there have been mixed views with respect to that matter. But the Prime Minister would have indicated the need, why he felt he needed to do that. And I want to applaud the Prime Minister from the perspective that this is on this occasion and the last occasion where he would have made a major, what may be considered a major announcement as it pertains to persons of African descent, that he has gone out of his way to make it abundantly clear what his position is. And he will broach no opposition. In fact, when he announced that $100 million would be spent in the at-risk communities, where the persons at risk are mostly persons of African descent, that every time a PNM administration attempts to do something that is considered to be affirmative action for persons of African descent, there is always pushback. And it has always been the practice of the People's National Movement that when such pushback comes about, that they capitulate and would back off, because we don't want to give the impression that, because the PNM has always been a party of all and for all. And so if people feel that this course of action is geared specifically towards persons of African descent, we don't want to be accused of discrimination and so on, and so they will back off. And Dr. Rowley said the time has come for the PNM to change that position. We recognize that there is need in that community, in the African community, and therefore the government has a role to play and a responsibility to treat with that. And the days of giving in to opposition, to persons who oppose on the basis of or the cry of is discrimination. So every time the PNM does something that is specifically targeting persons of African descent, you have persons from that other party will run to the Equal Opportunities Commission, they go to the courthouse and they claim discrimination. And then more often than not, these entities would find in favor of the complainants, and then the government will just back off. And then what happens? The at-risk communities remain at risk. The at-risk communities or the at-risk youth, African youth, right? Their situation worsens, and then when it has wider societal implications, all of a sudden, the government and the government and the government, right? And the government ain't doing nothing, and the PNM don't care about black people, and they ain't doing nothing for the at-risk youth and nothing for the African youth. And that's why when Dr. Rowley said, I will broach no opposition. Who vex, that is all your business. But I and my government have taken a decision. It ends here. We are going to invest the money in that community to treat with the issues that are resident in that community. Rather than just sit down and hear other groups always bad talking and washing them out in the African community. Right? Every time you see a person of African descent commit a crime, the first thing persons who support that party they say, yeah, PNM children again. Yeah, Cyril children. Yeah, CPN. I sure they're from a PNM household. I sure their mother and father is PNM. First thing they say. Well, if that is the case, then the PNM has a responsibility to take care of its own, and that's what they're doing. Right? Now, I understand that I didn't hear the statement, but Kafa Kambon would have basically, if I am to characterize his statement or his, because the media would have gone to him for comment, and I think he said basically said something to it like, so what's the big deal? And he changed it generally. To him, there's no real significance in it. And he has gotten a lot of links for that from various quarters. In fact, up until as recent as this morning, I was reading something and he was still getting some links in the comments. Now, I am not going to posit a view one way or the other with respect to Mr. Campbell, because as far as I'm of the view, Mr. Campbell is entitled to his opinion as is everybody else. That is his position. Perhaps he felt that there should be something more substantial. Maybe he thinks that the government should probably give land or something else. I don't know. As I said, I did not hear his comments, but I'm just going based on what I read and what I would have heard on the airwaves and on social media. So that is his position. He's so entitled, as is everybody else. But the bigger issue for me with respect to that whole situation is some of the people who I've seen and comment, right? Some of them not from the African community, who have taken issue with what Kafa Kamban has to say. They've never attended the Emancipation procession. They've never been to the Emancipation village, as we up in the savannah. They don't have one piece of African clothing or African wear in the closet. Some of them have African descent. And around Diwali time, you will see them posting up pictures in the shalwar and the kurta. But come Emancipation Day, on the days leading up to Emancipation Day, they're going to work in their shirt and tie. No dashiki, they're going to work in their shirt and tie as normal. Not even a scarf, a piece of African fabric to say, look, I identify, nothing of the sort. Right? They never do none of those things. But they're criticizing Kafra Kambo. Right? Whose transgression is worse? I just asking that question. Kambon based on his position or what he said, or those of you who want to criticize him, well, what are you doing to promote the African community? What are you doing to promote African culture? You ever support anything the Emancipation Committee had? Probably not. You ever went to Prindelas and buy something? No. As I said, you ain't not even a kerchief or a pocket square you have in African fabric, but you want to condemn Kafra Kambo. Really? Really? That making sense. So, Kambon, and I suppose persons would have criticized the man based on who he is, what he is supposed to represent, the organization of which he's a part, and what he would have done in his earlier and younger years. And therefore, they expected better from him based on that background. Okay? No problem with that. But I take umbrage with the media for going to Mr. Kambon to get comment, knowing full well that any comment that Mr. Kambon made would have been perceived to be representative or reflective of the views of the Emancipation Support Committee. Kafra Kambon has not been the head of the Emancipation Support Committee since 2020. He stepped down. I believe the head is now one Ms. Zakia Wadada. Why didn't they go to her to get her views? But you're going to Kafra Kambon. The man is a shell of his former self, unfortunately. Right? As someone who would have seen the clip with him speaking, they would have told me, they noticed certain things. Yeah, he's not the Kafra Kamban of yesterday. But then again, that is with the passage of time. But the media has this habit, and that's why the Prime Minister was well within his right to scold them the other day, right? To let them know. If they need a comment on anything happening in the PNM, the first person they run into is Laurel Azamba Leasing. Laurel is not the PRO of the PNM and has not been so since December of 2022 when she contested a different position. I believe she is now the education officer. I stand to be corrected. The PRO for the PNM is Faris Al-Rawi. But yet still, when they need comment on anything happening in the PNM, they don't go to Faris, they run into Laurel. Why is always doing that? They know who the PRO is. Now, if you tell me we try to reach Faris and we can get through and Laurel is always available, no problem. But why didn't you go to the head of the Emancipation Support Committee, the person, Ms. Wadada, who has been there for the last 4 years? You don't know her number? You couldn't ask Kafra for the number. You couldn't call Kafra's son and ask him. You know, and don't know anybody else from the Emancipation Support Committee to call or get the number for the office to say we need to get a comment from the head, but you run to Kafra, who hasn't been there. So he has said what he said. That is his view. He is no longer representative of the association from that level. So now the Emancipation Support Committee taking level licks, right? Wood in their tail. People saying they ain't supporting that thing, and then that is Kafra Kambon's views. He does not speak for the Emancipation Support Committee anymore. But when you go on there, ask him, he make his controversial comment, which he's entitled, and now the organization, which he no longer leads, getting licks. So any strides that they may have been making and maybe trying to make to be a little more effective in what it is they're supposed to do is level wood in the tail now because of a comment that he made. But the media needs to do better than that. Do better than that. Separate the two. If it is you're going to quote, and there's the thing that's getting me vexed, you know. Could have plenty of people out there who don't know that Kafra Kambon has not been the head of the Emancipation Support Committee since 2020. And I read in some comments here, and yes, you have persons of other ethnic backgrounds who chastising the man and talking about what he ever do for African people. Really? Really? Okay. But I just asked the question again, right? So those of African descent who chastising the man and by extension the Emancipation Support Committee. What is your contribution to the development of the African community? What's your contribution? What is your contribution? You can tell me anything. You're going to run out now and buy a dashiki. You're going to go to Eastside Plaza where they have plenty vendors selling African wear. Some of you just pass through there because you're going across on George Street to buy fish or something. Right? And you pass through and you head straight, so you head down in your phone. You ain't looking left, you're looking right. You ain't going upstairs, so you have no idea what it is that they have there. Nothing. And that's what I say. But you want to beat up on Kambon, but what you doing? What you doing? When it is that you have that other party chastising the government for making inroads and making efforts, concerted efforts to improve the stock of that community, where are you to defend? Do you come out on Facebook and tell them, hey, hold up? No, you're scrolling past because you're not interested in that. You're not interested in that. For years, we've been hearing the poor turnout at the Emancipation Village. You have persons who coming out there of African descent who selling all kind of things. That's probably the only time of the year you get an opportunity to see these people. But you wouldn't go there. No, but you're going to the redemption concert and you figure, hey, here's African. You put on any African way to go to that? No. I mean, no procession. The sun too hot for that. But those who go, kudos to all of you who make some contribution. But to those of you who don't and make no contribution whatsoever, shh, better you keep quiet. Yeah, keep quiet. I tell you, yes. So, moving on. Trevor says the media seems to be about trying to keep the population confused. That's exactly what they like to do. I saw when the Prime Minister, after he put a scolding on them, the first person to speak was Akash Samaru from CNC3, wanting to tell the Prime Minister, well, you know, he's a member of the fourth estate, which is the media, and he has to come to the defense of the media. Really? But there was nothing to come to defend? But the Prime Minister didn't lie? The fact of the matter is that the media continues, as the Prime Minister says, to be an echo chamber for the foolishness of the other party. Just look at how they're treating with this issue of the death of the babies. The Prime Minister had a right to be upset. The issue about the Prime Minister's travels. 10 million spent in 3 years, 19 trips. And scandalous is the headline on one of the newspapers, The Express. Did The Express take the time to go and do any research to say, well, okay, the 19 trips. Let's see if we could get some more information. Pull up some articles that you all carried in the very same Express, where the Prime Minister would have articulated what were the benefits. As he rightly said, every time he comes from a trip, he has a press conference, whether it be at the diplomatic lounge in the airport, or he would call a press conference a couple of days later at the diplomatic center. So he can say, this is what we achieved, this is what happened at the meeting. Can we say that we got that from his predecessor? Can we say we got that? When the 12 million or the $15 million was spent on the trip to India, anybody could provide me with the transcripts of the press conference that was held afterwards to tell us what the country benefited from that 12 million or $15 million? Anybody could tell me that? The trip to South Africa, when we, the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago, paid for the other leaders of the Caribbean to get a free trip to and from, courtesy Caribbean Airlines and the jumbo jet that was leased by the office of the Prime Minister. What was the benefit we got from that? Anybody could tell me, could provide me with the transcripts of that press conference to tell me what we got from that? When Mrs. Prasad Bisesa took her grandson to Brazil to see the World Cup, he was dressed up as Spider-Man, and she met with the then president of Venezuela. I can't remember the lady's name right now. Her name slips me. What benefit did we get from that? Did we get foreign direct investment from that trip? When she went to New York to collect her special award, and she was dressed up, she was in her black sequined shiny dress, and she took the opportunity to condemn the media and to tell the people, don't listen to the mainstream media in Trinidad and Tobago, only take and use some social media. How did we benefit from that? What was the cost of that trip? I just asking. I just asking. But anyway, that will be dealt with at another time. So they continue to prostitute this issue about the babies who lost their lives, unfortunately. And again, condolences to the families of these as the Prime Minister described them, our country's newest citizens. Again, truly unfortunate. You see, but I prefer, rather than what that other side is doing, calling for the head of the minister, calling for the head, because I am sure there are other things, misgivings that taken place in the health sector that we don't know about, that the minister has no clue about, and the persons who are supposed to know about it is those who have the first level of responsibility. Because between the minister and the NICU, there are several different layers of persons between, right? So under the minister, you have a number of persons working in the Ministry of Health of various ranks, some of them making more money than the minister. And then you have the regional health authorities. In this case, it's the Northwest Regional Health Authority that has a board. Below the board, you have a management team, executive management team, and then they have the supervisors and so on. And then you have the hospital management team, the heads of departments and so on. And even at the nurses level, I'm sure you would have a head nurse who's the supervisor. So there are various levels, right, of personnel between the Minister of Health and the least of the apostles working in the NICU unit. But we bypass all of them. And just head straight for the minister, because the buck's supposed to stop with him. Because his sole responsibility is the hospitals. The minister has no responsibility for anything else, just the day-to-day operations of the hospitals. And right. Okay. Shucks, I left that newspaper outside anyway. So Mrs. Prasad Bisesa held a press conference on Friday, and she came with her granddaughter's teddy bear. For effect now. You know? Yes, look, these poor babies. Look, me here with my grandchild teddy bear. And these poor children would never have the opportunity to hug up their teddy bear like this and so on. I still trying to understand why she had Jolene John, Tim Gopi Singh, and Lakram Bodo stand up like some puppets behind her. And you know, like the bubblehead you put on your dashboard, and they just so. Tim and Lakram, just as a side note, right? You all should probably consult, somebody who's into fashion. You see them oversized suits and them all they wearing there, that's so. How can I even say last year? That's so 19 long. Come on, man, all never hear about slim fit? Really? Tailor made? Gosh, boy, they look like all they was jogging in them suits there. Really? Come on, man. You ain't too old. You never too old, right? All that money all they making as doctors. Do better than that now. Man, this cream suit or whatever it is called, this beige suit. beaten. He's way up not him, please. But I digress. I noticed it. That nothing upsets me more than seeing people wearing these oversized half your wrist, all your wrist and everything cover up, and all you could barely see is your fingers. Oh gosh. Anyway, so she called her press conference again so that she could put in her 2 cents to, as I said, prostitute this whole matter, this unfortunate matter, to piggyback. So Annan done it, doing it in the courthouse. Right? So at the end of the day, whatever money the government pays, you gonna get a piece for representing these people, class action suit. So rather than leave it open for each family to get their own lawyer, he will represent everybody. And when money pass, everybody had to get here a piece. Because for money is never enough for him. Right? Never enough for him. So any opportunity that he could pounce on, he right there. Wolf. Anyway. So she calls on the Prime Minister to have a conscience, to have compassion, to get rid of the Minister of Health. And she's demanding compensation for the families of these children. Even before due process is completed, because the investigation is still underway, she's demanding compensation. Now, I know Annan probably ain't like that, right? Because Annan would prefer to go to the courthouse and get a bigger judgment than if the government simply sit down with these families and say, look, we understand, so and so and so. We'll appoint a committee to do an assessment of your purely something. Because, he's a big money man. So they probably at odds and variance with that. She demanded, we want compensation. No, get them compensation. But since she want to talk the compensation talk, I want to read something here. And I want to ask her how much compensation was paid for these families, right? Now, you all remember I told you I was looking for an article and I found it. This is an article dated July 7th, 2015, a story by Mark Bassant, senior multimedia investigative journalist. At that time, he was at CCN. I think he's back here. I could be wrong. It's entitled Deaths Under Query. Children's Life on Investigation. Doctor raised concern after 2 children died post-surgery at Columbia Hospital. Concerns were raised by local doctors about one of the Colombian medical institutions, sanctioned by the Children's Life Fund Authority, where sick children would be sent for urgent medical treatment. I've taken my time, because I know some time ago, Mr. Chancellor, I started too fast. The concern surfaced this year following the deaths of at least 2 local children at the Colombian facility, Fundación Clínica Chayo in Bogota. In a confidential letter, the Express obtained dated February 18, 2015. Dr. Camille Green, a pediatric consultant at the cardiology clinic at the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex, wrote to Dr. Vindra Singh, clinical head of the Department of Pediatric Medicine, expressing concerns about the competency and capability of the doctors based there. That's the hospital in Colombia. In the case of 6-year-old Shania Hernandez, Green indicated Shania was well known to the medical team at Wilson, Jacksonville, Florida, USA, where her second surgery was done, and recommended that she return there. However, Shania's mother said personnel at the Life Fund said that they were having issues with the US hospital, and despite her protests, her daughter was sent to Fundación Clínica Chayo in Colombia, dead 2 days after surgery. In her letter, Green indicated Shania went for surgery on January 20th, 2015, and she noted, during the surgery, the right atrium was cut during the stenotomy. She bled for 15 minutes before being started on cardiopulmonary bypass. She required multiple blood products and had organ failure as a result. She died 2 days after surgery. One must query the skill of the team. This is the doctor writing here. One must query the skill of the team at this hospital, as adhesions secondary to previous cardiac surgery should have been anticipated. Shania's mother believes the accidental cut to her daughter's heart proved her undoing. Accidental cut. So it wasn't anything that is okay to say, well, it's because of the child condition. They cut the child's heart at this hospital. Is what the parent is saying, right? They did not do a proper procedure. I think that is the reason she died. That cut, I think that is why she died, the grieving mother said, choking back tears. Adverse outcomes not uncommon. Interim chairman of the Children's Life Fund, Dr. Colin Furlong, first justified the reason for sending Shania to Colombia. We have sent medical reports to pediatric surgeons abroad in the States, pediatric cardiologists. We have gotten reports from them. On the basis of those reports, we have referred the case to the ministry in Colombia, which is the proper step. There are patients who have adverse outcomes in hospitals all over the world, said Furlong in an interview last Friday. Furlong admitted an investigation had been ordered and said he had told officials that they needed to sort their hospital out. Although he still praised the hospital for its service and excellent clinical outcomes. So he tell the people in Colombia, hey, all they need to sort out all the hospital because all they getting me in trouble, right? You see all them mistakes and things all they making there? Get all the act together, right? Because when we send in children to all they can't be doing things like that, cutting the child heart and all kind of thing. You're supposed to be professional, be able to better than that now. We don't want to be answering questions. If we had to send these children to America, you know how much money that cost them? Begin all your blight. Come now, man. Right. I continue. Hey, anyway. He said, I have personally spoken to their competency within the Ministry of Health. We have asked, sent all files, all the notes for an investigation. I have had a conversation with them 2 weeks ago. They are going to get a report, and that report is expected by the 8th of July. Depending on that report and further discussions, they would then refer to the National Ethics Tribunal. They will then make a decision on what action to take pending on what they find, Furlong said. Death 4 days after surgery. This is another one. In her letter, Green also expressed concern over the death of another child, Sarai Reyes, who needed heart surgery. She died at 4 months old. Sarai was placed on sildenafil to protect her lungs from pulmonary hypertension while awaiting surgery. There are at least 2 indications to do a preoperative catheterization in this case. 1, anomalous coronary artery, and 2, risk of pulmonary hypertension. After reviewing the summary of her surgery, she was not, and they put not in bold letters, she was not evaluated by a cardiac catheterization, which would have identified her pulmonary hypertension. She died from complications of pulmonary hypertension 4 days after surgery. Inadequate preparation. Green wrote that proper procedure was not followed to prep baby Reyes, born last October, for the surgery to detect her vulnerability to hypertension. Sarai's parents told the Express they were too emotional to speak about their daughter's case. A third patient is referred to in Dr. Green's letter, Kayla Hernandez, who had surgery at that hospital in November 2014 but is alive. She pointed out that the child was sent for a Blalock-Taussig shunt and returned without a Blalock-Taussig shunt. So what we pay for? What the Children's Life Fund paid for? What you send the child to the hospital for, she come back without. Anybody, did Ms. Prasad Bissessa fire anybody? Did they call for any investigation? Was compensation paid to the parents of any of these people? But she calling for demanding immediate compensation. I continue. She noted that the wrong procedure of a stenotomy and debulking of the right ventricular muscle bundles was done instead. Green in her letter continued. The problem in this case is not primarily subvalvular obstruction, but obstruction at the pulmonary valve itself, pulmonary atresia. This child will only benefit from a shunt bypassing the atretic pulmonary artery. And she further stated, so this child is now in our care and requires intervention again. This procedure was in effect unnecessary and incomplete. You send the people child to Colombia. They do the wrong procedure. Send her back to Trinidad. After money done spent, she come back to Trinidad. And now the doctors in Trinidad have to attend to her. Audit recommended. Green's letter ended. These patients were discussed with Dr. Torres, and we are of the opinion that we have to raise awareness about the quality of care at Fundación Clinic Shayo in Colombia. We are hoping you can address our concerns to the appropriate authority to ensure this hospital does no further surgeries until they are at least audited. This is the recommendation of Dr. Green in Trinidad. Based on the number of patients that the Children's Life Fund was sending to this hospital, and the fact that they were ending up coming back to Trinidad and Tobago either in a coffin or without the procedure that they went for being done. Listen to the man who was then the Minister of Health, Fuad Khan. Mortality rates high in these children. In spite of the findings that Dr. Green mentioned just now, Health Minister Dr. Fuad Khan sought to defend the decision to send the children to the Colombian hospital, stating the morbidity and mortality cases are high in these children. In an interview with Furlong and other members of the board present last Friday, Khan said, now, if you want to take one case out of multiple cases and say, okay, one case had a problem, so we must not send that. We must not send any. Are we balancing costs with outcomes? We're not balancing costs with outcomes. The outcomes from Colombia has been very good, and the cost has been 1/10 of the cost of that of the United States. Let me repeat that. The outcomes from Colombia has been very good, and the costs has been 1/10 of the cost of that of the United States. So it's cheaper to send them to Colombia than the United States, where the treatment is better, a little more accurate, and they're likely to come back home on an airplane, alive, breathing, rather than coming back in the luggage hold in a coffin, or rather than coming back to Trinidad with the same problem that they went to, but an additional problem because whatever procedure was done to them in Colombia was unnecessary. We go again. He also argued that 4 of the children had received treatment in the United States compared to only 2 in Colombia. At the end of the day, mishaps occur in all surgical aspects, said Khan. Mishaps occur in all surgical aspects. And based on my research as well, he had a similar approach or similar sentiments when it is the baby whose head was cut during the C-section, who was cut from ear to ear. Similar views. Mishaps occur in all surgical aspects, said Khan. Small price to pay. Small price to pay. Was this Colombian hospital favored? The question was asked of Furlong. Colin Furlong, who was the head of the Children's iPhone at the time. Mark Bassat. Was someone getting kickbacks for actually recommending this hospital in Colombia? Dr. Furlong? A fair question to ask. Because I don't understand how it is you could be getting reports, seeing children coming back if they're dead, right? And when you do the research, you realize that the reason why the children died wasn't because of their condition, it's because of some mishap, some clinical mishap, right? Or surgical mishap, as in cutting the child's heart. So if that didn't happen, that child might have been alive today. Yeah, but Colin Furlong said, he laughs. Seriously? You have to ask the question. Unfortunately, I have to tell you the answer is no. Unfortunately, he has to tell him the answer is no. It may not be a happy answer for those people who like to hear those kind of things, but clearly, what the job we have been trying to do, we would not be looking for kickbacks. Furlong argued, and this is the kicker, that losing 6 lives out of over 200 was a small price to pay. Let me repeat that. Furlong argued that losing 6 lives out of over 200 was a small price to pay. Did they fire him? Was he sent on suspension for making such a callous and heartless statement? Now put yourself in the shoes of the parents of these 6 children, right? Parents of these 6 children. And you entrusted your child's well-being, the life of your child to this children's life fund. Because treatment wasn't available here, you had to go abroad because remember, Cabinet Note number 1 of 2010. That was the first issue they dealt with because the Children's Life Fund was so near and dear to the heart of the leader, the then Prime Minister, because she made that promise and she so loved children because she's a mother and a grandmother and she's an aunt and a this and a that. So the first thing she dealt with was the Children's Life Fund. First cabinet meeting they had, first item on the agenda was the Children's Life Fund because we need to ensure these children get life-saving treatment. But they made sure when they crafted the law that governed the Children's Life Fund Act, they stated that the conditions under which you could get money to go abroad, the treatment mustn't be available here, and the child's condition must be terminal, right? So they have to be at the point that if they don't get the surgery, they're going to dead. Let me put it colloquially. Otherwise, no support. Otherwise, no support, right? One have a curricula, a barbecue, a boat ride to raise money. That's what they put in the act. But then when they demitted office now, and children who had an illness, it wasn't terminal, it wasn't life-threatening at the point, when they come to the Children's Life Fund for support now, and the Children's Life Fund says to them, well, here what? Based on the act that was drafted and passed by the People's Partnership, we can't give you funding for this because you don't satisfy the criteria put in the act that they created, right? So yes, the child is ill, but it is not deemed to be a terminal illness. Based on what they're saying here, the child could probably live with this, but the quality of life may not be of the best. But the act, we have to go by the act, the law. If it is we deviate and give you all the money for this and send the child abroad, we will be in contravention of the law and we could get locked up and sued. Mrs. Prasad Bisesa come and hold a press conference to say no, she went to the parliament to chastise the government to say, well, all they need to do is to bring a simple amendment to the parliament and amend the act so that even children who are not terminally ill could also benefit from the Children's Life Fund. But that was your baby. Cabinet note number 1. Why didn't put that in the act? Why did you make it so stringent that it had to be care is unavailable in Trinidad and it must be a terminal illness? That's all they put out there. That was your bill. Who drafted that? The Attorney General office under Ram Logan. He's the best lawyer according to them. So he didn't read what it is he presented to the parliament and debate. You all debated that. And then you want to come now to manhandle this administration to tell them all they have to do is to bring a simple amendment. But you all were there for 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days. As a matter of fact, you should have never put that in the act in the first place. So you put something inside there that ties the handcuffs the authorities and the current administration in terms of who they could give help to from the Children's Life Fund and want to come and blame them. And you vex. All they had to do is to bring a simple amendment to the parliament to amend the act. And when you all come back into office, you will amend it. Right. But Furlong argued that losing 6 lives out of over 200 was a small price to pay. He and lost his work. He remained in that position. Now I want to ask Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, because I'm sure she was aware of this. If it is now, the Minister of Health would come and say, well, here what now? We've had hundreds or even thousands of babies pass through the NICU unit in Port of Spain in general, and they would have recovered and they went home and they're alive and well today. So 11 lives lost out of 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 is a small price to pay. If, according to Mr. Manning, if Terence Dayal Singh were to make a comment like that, Dr. Rowley would have his head the next morning. He gone. That is the most insensitive thing that you could say, right? And we wouldn't hear the end of it from them. So how the minister could say something like that? The minister callous and cruel, but wicked. He don't care about the family and the suffering that the family is going through. They call in for long care about the families, the 6 families, the 6 sets of parents of these 6 children who died. Because all they find it was too expensive and it was costing 1/10 of the cost of what it would cost to send them to the US. So send them to Colombia. So at least we could put on the statistics that we sending people benefiting from each other's life. And whether they live or they dead is neither here nor there. They are statistics. We don't expect everybody to survive. So 6 lives lost out of 200 saved is a small price to pay. So they put a price tag on the life of these 6 children. And these parents today, still, how many years later, 10, 11, 12 years later, should be saying, my child, every time the child birthday come around, today would have been my child's birthday, He would have been so-and-so years old. She would have been so-and-so years old. If my child was alive, she would have been writing SEA today. If my child was alive, he would have been doing so-and-so. He would have been doing, well, he would probably gone to this school or that school. So when these parents who probably don't have any more children, seeing the SEA results come out and the joy on the faces of some of those parents who have children to go and hug up and carry them to KFC or to Pizza Hut or Movie Town to celebrate. They don't have that facility. They don't have that to do. You know why? Because their children were collateral damage. Their lives of their children was a small price to pay because we had a greater success rate, 200. And that 200 that he mentioned, all of them didn't go to Colombia. Some of them went to the US. So we're talking about the total 200 that the fund helped. A small price to pay. He didn't lose his work. Fuad Khan didn't lose his work. Nobody called for the minister to go. Did Mrs. Prasad Bisesa scold Mr. Furlong, Dr. Furlong, for that heartless comment? Yeah, your child was a statistic. Okay, so your child died. Big whoop. Yeah, but we saved 200 lives, so you could take consolation in that. That's what you say to them. So those 6 parents now, wondering, boys, better I take my chance in the hospital here, no? If they didn't send my child to Colombia, maybe if I try to raise the money and send my child to America, he or she might have been alive today. And that is something that they have to live with, playing in their mind over and over and over since that happened. But according to Colin Furlong, 6 out of 200 is a small price to pay. And as I said before, but if somebody in this administration come and tell you, well, we had hundreds or we've had thousands of babies pass through the NICU in Port of Spain and no infection, and today they're home with their families healthy. So that was the 11 or the 7 or the 8, whatever the figure is. There's a small price to pay because of the how many other hundreds who we saved. And they applaud that. And the supporters, they don't talk about that. The people will raise this issue, no, but Terrence must go. They want to hold protest yesterday in, by the Cuba Children's Hospital. Prasad Bisesa demanding that the Cuba Children's Hospital be opened because they have facilities there for babies, for sick babies. So open it. Right? Big protest demanding that that hospital be opened. For those of you who've been to that hospital, right? If you don't have a vehicle, your own transport, you know how much stress it is to go to the Cuba hospital? So if you have family, you live in Granby, and they send your child to the NICU unit in Cuba Children's Hospital, at least in Port of Spain, you could get transport from Granby probably straight to Port of Spain. Or you get transport from Granby to Arima and Arima to Port of Spain. If you're in Granby, you need to leave Granby to go to Arima, then from Arima to Curep, then from Curep to Chagonas, then something from Chagonas to Presal, and then take a taxi from Presal to go into the hospital. Unless you could get a taxi going San Fernando, probably from Curep, to drop you on the highway. But when you're finished and you need to leave now, it's not a case you could just walk outside and flag down and you get a taxi and you head back, you know. You have to go back all the way around to the back, Presal, heading into Grand Couva there. Hopefully to get a taxi probably coming out of Grand Couva to take you back to Chagonas, wherever those taxis go. And then you go from Chagonas to wherever till you reach home. They're giving you a passage for that. But you see, they figured it made sense to put that hospital there. When we know originally the hospital was supposed to be in that Endeavour area in Chagonas. And Jack Warner is famous for having said, that was the original decision of the cabinet. And one morning he wake up and hear the hospital go in Couva. Who made that decision? But as Gwyneth St. Rose Graves told us, they have no cabinet minutes. That cabinet never used to take minutes. So he don't know who made that decision, when that decision was made, and there are no cabinet minutes that you could go back to say, well, yes, this is when that decision was made. I drove past that hospital there. That's the hospital where my sister died almost 2 years ago, right? When they diagnosed her with COVID and sent her there from St. James to that hospital. And I went there, when it is I had to go claim her body. And all this set around, you had to make to go through Pisal and come around and so on and go, so and come. That makes no sense. But for them, it's making sense. Open the hospital and move the NICU unit to there. So as a parent who want to go every day to see your child, make sure you have a car or you put aside some money to rent a car until your child come out of the NICU unit. Right? Now, if you live in Couva, it's okay because it's just a stone's throw away. But still, so we know who that hospital was supposed to cater for, not people in the north and the east and so on. Well, you have Port of Spain and Eric Williams and you have Grandy, that's for all you. This hospital down here is not for all you. Basically, that's basically what it is. But she wanted the man open the Cuba Children's Hospital. Right? That making sense. Something very wrong with Olia. So those 6 children. So when Olia wants to come, she wants to come now and make demands. I'm asking the families, the parents of those 6 children who are considered to be a small price to pay, did they receive compensation? And if so, how much compensation, Ms. Prasad Bisesa? Or were you of the view, like Dr. Furlong and possibly your then Minister of Health, Fuad Khan, that was a small price to pay? Yeah, these things happen. These things happen. But you know, yesterday is yesterday and today is today. We're not willing to accept these things happen. No. It's only under the PNM. When these things happen under the UNC, yeah, it's par for the cause. But under the PNM, the minister has to go, the prime minister, the whole government has to go. I'm just asking the question, look at there. But you heard what Fuad Khan said, right? It costing them 1/10 of what it costing. 1/10 of what it would cost them to send the children to the US. The child whose heart was cut, she went to the US before. And she did a follow-up surgery. But all they had sent her there before and probably find out I had too much money to spend by. But you know what wasn't too much money to spend? At that same time, let me read this for you. Yeah, we're going on that road this morning. I don't like to do the tit for tat thing, but you see the hypocrisy of those persons and their supporters. We will remind you all of the things that all you forget. So aside from the $6.1 million on helicopter rides, how many children's lives, those 6 children, couldn't that $6.1 million save them? To ride from the Queen's Park Savannah to the Pink Palace and back. That $6.1 million could have saved them. The $20 million that all you spent on the happiness campaign to tell people what it means to be happy. So when Ernie Ross was liking himself, his advertising company liking themselves with money from NGC, children suffering in a hospital bed, right? Didn't know that when they boarded that plane, they were going to their death. Didn't know that. The parents didn't know that. That when you boarded that plane to Colombia with your child, you didn't know that you would be leaving with a death certificate in your hand. But let me read this. Express article dated December 19, 2014. Hawaii got more than 10 million. He left with $1.625 million more after quitting his job at First Citizens. Finance and Economy Minister Larry Hawaii did not leave state-owned First Citizens with a golden handshake of 10 million. He actually left with $11.625 million. Let me repeat that. He actually left with $11.625 million. The $11.625 million is higher from what the former Nairi Alfonso chaired board had agreed to pay him, which would have worked out to about 10 million. So the board said we gave him 10, but somehow it ended up 11.625. The issue of Hawaii's exit payment was discussed by the First Citizens Board on June 20th, 2012. The minutes from that meeting read, yeah, well, at least this board takes minutes. Members agreed that they could lawfully make a payment to Mr. Hawaii and would exercise their discretion to do so for the purpose of encouraging and sustaining high levels of performance, particularly among executive staff. Exercise their discretion. So it wasn't an entitlement. It's a discretion. So that when I posted this article in a comment to one of the supporters of that party under a post on Facebook earlier this week, and they want to tell me nonsense about, oh, the man was entitled to that because of the years that he worked and the service that he gave. No, he wasn't entitled to that. So miss me with that BS. Members were asked individually on whether a payment based on years of service should be made to Mr. Hawaii in reward for past and meritorious service to the group, and whether this would be in the best interest of the bank and its ability to attract and retain the best personnel in the market. Members voted by a majority 6-1 based on the legal advice of Mr. Martino. I'm assuming this is Russell Martino, Senior Counsel, and precedents set in the bank that it would agree to make a payment to Mr. Hawaii, calculated on the basis of 2.5 months' salary for each year of service or part thereof. Mr. Anil Sitaram dissented. Hawaii's additional $1.625 million came from a calculation of benefits he enjoyed as chief executive and he would have received from the company had he stayed until retirement. So aside from his basic salary, what about other perks they have for the CEO of First Citizens? He say, well, here what now entitled, you know, if I didn't take this work as the Minister of Finance, all of these benefits I would have been enjoying as the CEO of First Citizens. I want to ask Mr. Howard, who put a gun to your head and tell you leave your cushy work as the CEO of First Citizens to go and become Minister of Finance? Were you forced? Were you under duress? Somebody hold a shotgun and tell you, hey, take the work or else? You made that decision on your own. You could have said thanks, but no thanks. You see that small pay the Minister of Finances get? My line minister, I making more money than my line minister. So I not going to leave my cushy work here to become the boss and to earn less money than I'm earning as a subordinate. You could have said that and let them find somebody else. They could have leave Bukaran there. But no. The Sunday Express understands that a directive was here, they said. The Sunday Express understands that a directive was given by a senior government official to make the payment to Hawaii after he agreed to become Minister of Finance and the Economy 4 years before he was set to retire from the organization. So he had 4 years left to go. And they want to tell you, well, if he had stayed on for that 4 years, he would have earned $11.625 million. To make such a payment, The then board was guided by attorney Russell Martino's legal opinion on whether the bank's directors would be in breach of their duty owed to the bank, its shareholders and or employees in making an ex gratia payment or other payment of a considerable sum to him on his early retirement. So when they decided to give him all this money, I can't even call that a golden handshake, because the whatever metal that handshake was made out of, it is out of this world, right? But they weren't too sure. So they say, here, what? Let me seek legal counsel, right? So in case this come back to haunt us, and the PP lose the election, and the PNM comes in, and they decide to sue to get back the 11.6 million, and they sue the board, as the People's Partnership did when they came in to sue the board of ETech and to sue Malcolm Jones and everybody else. People who they never talk about between 2010 to 2015, they sue. But the one man they talk about between 2010 to not 2010, before 2010, to get into office, they tell me called a hard thief, billions and billions of dollars, not millions, not hundreds of millions. They say called a hard thief, billions of dollars. They ride the back of that to get into office. Ride him to get into office. All the money they spend to put up big billboards on the highway by Beatum there. Picture with Calder Hart and Mr. Manning. Next to a pile of $100 bills, stacks and stacks of $100 bills to tell you Calder Hart thief and the thief. Timothy Hamel Smith and Vernon Delima spent the precious money and went all the way to Malaysia to get information to prove that Calder Hart brother-in-law was a director of Sunway, which was one of the companies that was getting contracts to build Napa and Sapa and whoever else. They went all that way just to prove that to say Calder Hart thief. And when they got into office in 2010, you hear anything about Calder Hart? 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days they in office. Calder Hart never talked to a policeman. Calder Hart doesn't know what a Trinidad and Tobago handcuff look like. He doesn't know what the inside of a prison cell or a police station cell looks like, what it smells like. He don't know. You know why? Because them wasn't interested in Calder Hart. The only person who tried to get justice with respect to the claims that Calder Hart thieved billions was a man named Ishmael Samad. When he went to the sledgehammer by Calder Hart house in Cascade, say ponging on the man gate, come out, Calder, I come to make a citizen's arrest. Poor Ishmael could barely lift up the sledgehammer or anything, so he had to fall back 3-4 times and before he able to bring it forward to slam in the gate. After the 3rd time, he said, all right, that is it. Let me just sit down, catch my breath. Come out. And only watching the sledgehammer cookie eye. 3 is enough. Well, 2.5. Poor fella. But then he ended up getting arrested and charged for malicious damage. Right? When they asked the then Attorney General, Ram Logan, so what going on with Calder Hart? Well, let's say 80 billions. Well, we know where Mr. Hart is. When we're ready for him, we know how to contact him. But you sue Malcolm Jones. You didn't talk about Malcolm Jones during the 2010 election campaign. You sue the board of ETech, which is people like Ken Julian and Wendy Fitzwilliam and all of them. We never hear nothing about them. Civil suit. But you ain't bring no civil suit against Calder Hart who thief. All you told us, billions. No lawsuit again to catch him. But you went after. Right. I digress. Let me continue. So I was making the point that the board of First Citizens decided to CYA cover their assembly, right? So they went and spent money to pay Russell Martino for a legal opinion. Russell Martino is senior counsel, he ain't cheap. So in addition to what they pay Hawaii, they had to pay a piece of money to Russell Martino to render that legal opinion, right? Your taxpayers' money, because First Citizens is a government bank. That is your money inside it. In my opinion, it would be prudent, and this is what Mr. Martino said, right? It would be prudent for the minutes to record the payment is being made for that purpose. Past, long, and faithful services. After all, the senior employee has served long, 31 years. He has served faithfully so much so that he has reached the highest level of the bank. His achievements bear testimony to this, and the minutes should reflect his achievements in this context. The minutes should also reflect the payment is also being made as testimony of the bank's efforts to encourage faithful services among its employees, Martino's opinion stated. Having said the above, I caution, this is Russell Martino, I caution against the bank taking into account irrelevant considerations, and at all costs, the bank is to avoid considering the benefit of the senior official or what loss he would otherwise suffer. So you see all them things he talking about, if it is he had stayed on, he would have get this benefit. and that benefit because they would have take care, they would have fixed, give him money for his car, he would have buy whatever big car. He have a pension fund for big vehicles. I remember one time I walking down, I was going down St. Vincent Street, and like he went by his lawyer. You all know at the bottom of St. Comte, well, just before you reach Queen Street. It's Queen Street, right? Yes, corner of Queen and St. Vincent Street. They have a pink building on the right-hand side. There's some lawyers inside. And I know you went to say lawyer, whatever. And he driving a BMW X6, catching the backside to come out, reversing so and turning so and twisting so. And I happened to be walking past and he asked me if I could give him a little direction. So see me there now, playing traffic police. Look, take out the lock. Yeah, all right, go back now. Come forward. Right, go back. Put on the lock. Right, come so. All right, come on here. Right, hold right there. Reverse now. Come forward. Go back a little bit. Take out the lock. Turn so. Right, come straight now. This is me. Yeah? Should I give me a little piece of that money? That 11.6 that you get? I ain't gonna number. Just say, thanks, you pop the horn and he gone. All right. So I did my community service for the day. I continue. That is the consideration, and this is Russell Martino speaking here, that should guide the members of the board of their decision to make a payment, and if so, in what quantum. At the end of the day, an honest man in the position of director of the bank should, in the whole of the circumstances, reasonably believe that the payment was for the benefit of the bank. The Sunday Express understands that money was paid to him from a fund in the bank called the Group Creditors Fund, which by 2011 stood at $30,315,006. Now, the only thing I know about group creditors is where is insurance that the bank would normally take out, so that when a person comes and they take a loan, the loan is supposed to be insured, and they would factor that into the loan payment, pay it, So it goes on to say, however, the fund was closed down by the central bank last year. When was this fund open and when was it closed, and why was it closed down? And why did you all take the money from there? If this is something that he's entitled to, is it that you all normally pay retiring executives from this group creditors fund? Why it came from there? When the Sunday Express raised the issue of the fund at a news conference held by the bank on December 8th, Deputy Chief Executive Sharon Christopher explained that the central bank closed down the fund because it was an insurance business and not banking. As I said, guys, I know group creditors, the money you're collecting from everybody who take a loan to pay insurance. So if they die, insurance pays off the loan and the bank can lose it. So I don't understand why they took the money from there. But okay. So since that fund closed down now, all the other executives who retired after Mr. Hawaii, how were they paid? Which fund did the money come from to pay them? She denied that Hawaii's exit payment came from the fund, but she could not identify a line item in the bank's accounts for the payment. She said it would have been included in the line item for salaries. On June 2nd, 2012, The Guardian reported Hawaii would receive a parting gift of $10 million after he resigned to take up the position of Minister of Finance, a job that would give him as corporation sole oversight of all state-owned companies, including First Citizens. I wish to categorically state, and this is Mr. Hawaii, however, that any payment made by the bank to me falls far short of what I would have accrued had I served the last 3 years of my tenure to retirement. So he's saying even the 11.6 million that he get wasn't enough. That was less than what he would have got if he had stayed on for the remaining 3 years. I continue. These payments were all properly approved when the bank's board independently considered my entitlement after 31 years of service, how I said in a statement at the time. Between the loss of income, bonuses, and pension enhancement, my family would be deprived of funds we had planned for the future and to which my retirement would have entitled us all. Imagine then what it would feel like to know that regardless of this sacrifice, we would still become the target of personal attacks and untruths, he had said. But I just read for you all where Russell Martino, in his opinion, which you, Joe, and Jenny taxpayer paid for, said that the board is not to take into consideration any loss that Mr. Hawaii would suffer. But he telling you that money is to compensate him for the things that he would lose out on for the additional 3 years had he stayed on as the CEO of First Citizens. and choose instead to go on to become a government minister, where his salary would have been about $41,000 a month, as opposed to between 120, 130 to 150 a month that he was probably making at that time as CEO of First Citizens, and all the other perks. But as government minister, in addition to the $41,000 salary he was making, he was able to purchase a car, and not pay tax and not pay VAT on it, and then all of the other allowances that he would have gotten. You could go and see it, and with all the allowances and everything, when you add it up, it working up to probably over $60,000 a month. But even so, if you deduct his salary as minister and all the other perks that he would get and total compensation package, then you should have minus that from whatever his salary was as CEO of First Citizens, and just pay the difference. Because it's not that when he became Minister of Finance, he was doing that for gratis. He wasn't doing it for free. He was receiving a salary. So all you pull him from there, compensate him, right? For the years, so he decided to work. So for the 3 years that he would have been there and would have actually done work, we pay him for that 3 years for no work done as the CEO of First Citizens. So you get paid for work that you didn't do. But we're saying if you had stayed, you would have done the work. So, but we're paying you because you're going to become Minister of Finance. And since you would have made this salary, we will pay it to you anyway. Ronald Harford was the managing director of Republic Bank when I joined the bank in the early 2000s. He started, and he used to always tell that story to the staff whenever the opportunity presented itself, of how he started in the mailroom under Barclays Bank before it became Republic, and he worked his way up through the ranks, and eventually he became managing director. And then he ended his career with Republic Bank as the chairman of the board. I wonder if Mr. Harford got $11.625 million from Republic Bank, because his entire working life was in Republic Bank. First paycheck and last paycheck he received was from Republic. I wonder if he got $11.625 million when he left Republic. It'd be interesting to find out. The Sunday Express was unable to get a comment from Hawaii yesterday. Martino's opinion: the directors can lawfully make a payment to former employees provided they consider they are doing so is bona fide and in the best interest of the bank. Not the best interest of the retiring employee, the best interest of the bank. In considering what is bona fide, they must exercise their independent discretion at the end of the day. So of the 7 members of the board, one man say, nah, well, you're mad. Forget that. I'm not supporting that, and I want it on record that I'm not supporting paying Hawaii $11.625 million. Whatever logic, and whoever from the senior government official was who tell all of that, I want no part of that. So you see, if them lost the election and the PNM come in and they decide to sue the board, I want it on record that I said I don't support it. So nobody is suing me and all in touching my little kakada and my house or wherever it is I have to pay back nothing. So one man had that sense. The rest of them, we continue. In considering what is in the best interest of the bank, they are entitled to have regard to reasonable measures towards encouraging or sustaining high levels of performance by employees. So in other words, you mustn't be attracting people at the senior level at the bank on the basis that Hawaii get 11.6 million and people coming in telling themselves they could get that or something resembling that. So when it is that you're looking to poach or headhunt and you're looking to pull somebody from some other bank or whatever to tell them come to First Citizens and take up this position, the motive or the incentive mustn't be, well, you see, we pay Hawaii 11.6, so you know you could get something. Come. In considering what is in the best interest of the bank, they may consider that it is only by dealing liberally with distinguished officers that the best men and women will be attracted into the service of the bank. In considering what is in the best interest of the bank, they may consider making the payment to distinguished officers as a reward for past, long, and faithful services. The minutes of the relevant board meeting, they reflect the considerations of 2 and 5 above. In considering what is in the best interest of the bank, the directors should avoid considerations relating to the best interest of the retiring officer. At least it must not overshadow in any way the best interest of the bank. So in other words, all you're not supposed to study, well, you know, Mr. Hawaii worked 31 years and he had 3 more years to go or 4 more years to go. And this Mr. Hawaii probably was planning to use this money to do this, that, and the other. So let's give. No. Mr. Martino is very explicit here. He made it pellucidly clear. The director should avoid considerations relating to the best interest of the retiring officer. The best interest of the retiring officer. Nobody tell Hawaii to take the work and go to become Minister of Finance. He made that decision. He made that decision. So you can't study, well, you know, if he take up that work, he will be the Minister of Finance, and then he will still have oversight for the bank. And if we don't give him the money that he looking for, we might end up in problems because he might use his position as minister and as responsibility for the bank for whoever replaces him to punish us. Or if we don't give him what it is, this amount of money, then when time comes and they have to, when our term as directors of the board ends, they might say, well, nah, because he is responsible for taking the names to the cabinet of who he recommends to be appointed to the board. So he might say, well, nah, well, they didn't want to give me my money, well, they want to shortchange me, well, I'm getting rid of all you. So you see the little kakada all they getting every month as board fees, forget that, that's done. I bring in on people on the board who are loyal to me. So people looking at the little crumbs, as they say, the position, they want to say, I'm a director on the board of First Citizens. Yes, I'm a director. And they don't want to jeopardize that. So let me make sure and get a man what we feel he's deserving of, so that when he become minister and time for them to reappoint the board, he will look favorably upon us and remember the favor that we did for him in giving him all of this money. But Rowley want to make the rich richer. And yes, Rowley making the rich richer. Tell me which one of Keith Rowley's ministers get that kind of money to leave their work wherever they were to become a government minister? Which one of Mr. Patrick Manning's ministers? Who Patrick Manning paid $11.6 million to leave their work to become a minister of government under his administration? Pandey did that. Jolene John was making a ton of money working for Pizza Boys. Did Pandey pay her $11 million to leave Pizza Boys to become a minister of his government? Who A&R Robinson pay? Who did George Chambers pay? Who did Eric Williams pay that kind of money to leave their job, their cushy job in the private sector, to become a government minister? The only person to do that, only prime minister to sanction that folly, is Kamala Prasad Bisesa. But put her back, because she know how to manage the economy that she said dead, and the country broke. But we come into that just now. Considering any loss which the resigning officer may otherwise suffer should not be a feature of the decision-making process. This is Russell Martino telling the board that. But based on what Hawaii said, the board paid Martino a ton of money, whatever money they pay him for this legal opinion, and then totally disregarded it. Totally disregarded it, and went ahead and paid him because they studied, well, how much he would have make, and this is what he would have get, and these are the perks, so we need to give him that. The minutes of the meeting must be recorded with great care so as to reflect that members of the board of directors in making the decision were motivated by the best interest of the bank. Finally, as is clear from section 99.3 of the Act, the duty of the directors is owed to the bank alone. Not to the retiring officer, not to the CEO, not to the man who is about to become the Minister of Finance. You owe nothing to him. Any payment that you make to him must be made on the basis of the best interest of the bank. And I read this article that at the same time this folly was taking place and they could have found money to pay him $11.625 million, 6 children were sent to this hospital in Colombia because it's cheaper. Today those children are deceased and have been so for a number of years. Today these children should have been going to secondary school, primary school, secondary school, getting ready to write SCA, looking forward to pick subjects in Form 3 to do for CAPE. That's what they should have been doing. Their parents should have had multiple pictures, right, and memories of the last 10, 12 years or whatever it is with the children. They have that. You know why? Because the government say it's cheaper to send them to Colombia in a cut-rate hospital that was no damn good. And after 1 dead, 2 dead, never hear them saying no, but how come after the first child died or the second child died or the third, why wasn't something done? But six, how many more did you all send there? 6 died. It had 1 who lived. 4, she was fortunate. But as I read, They gave her the wrong procedure. Gave her the wrong procedure. She was one of the fortunate ones. But every child that you sent there, you sent with the knowledge that they was going there at the risk of not coming back alive. We had 1/10 of the cost according to Fuad Khan. It would cost 1/10 of what it would cost to send them to the US. But we had no problem paying Hawaii 11.625 million so he could put that in the bank account and invest it wherever. So he and his family could enjoy themselves. So if he wanted to take a trip to Europe and take a European cruise, he could carry the whole family. So that when he leaves politics, he could rock back and cock up his foot and relax because all his bills will be paid. He don't have to worry for money. He good. And when his sons or his daughters come to him and say, Daddy, you could buy this for me. Daddy, you could buy that for me. Oh, no problem. He could buy it. But these 6 parents, they don't have the child to come and ask, Mommy, you could buy this for me. And what they would have asked for would have been nothing compared to what Hawaii children could ask for. Because those 6 parents, if they had the kind of money Hawaii had, that Hawaii get, they wouldn't have to depend on the children's lives for. They could have taken the child to the US and spend the money. But it's because they're poor. But they always care about the poor and the poor. And they're the champions of the poor. But you didn't care about those poor parents. You didn't care about them. You didn't care about their children. Collateral damage. Right? No. We say 200. So 6. So it tells me, so if it was 10, 15, we say 200. And every time the number went up, so if it went up to 250, the number that we could treat as a small price also goes up. So 400 lives saved, so if 20 dead, a small price to pay. 20 as a percentage of 400 is okay. All these bleeding hearts who supporting that party now, and when Bial Singh must go, and Rowley must go, and fire the whole board of the NWRHA, and fire this one and fire that one. We remember, not one person was fired for that. And thank goodness, all you lost the election in 2015 because Lord knows how many other people, children, you all were sent to that hospital to die because it's cheaper. But the 175 million all you spend for Eden Gardens, 123 million more than it was valued according to Lyndon Scott. You know how many lives that could have saved? That was more than enough money to send those children to the US and save their lives. But it was more important to you to enrich your friends and give them $123 million more than what the valuator, HTC, the private valuator that the HTC hired. It was more important. And to fatten their pockets, but Rowley making the rich richer. So the directors of Point Lisa's company limited or whatever, to whom they paid the 175 million for Eden Gardens. All of them smiling today. They were laughing all the way to the bank. While these poor parents go into every church and every religious house they could find to pray so that their children would survive and lead a normal life. Not a wealthy life, a normal life. While they say in prayers, praying to God, God save my child. All these people were laughing all the way to the bank. We get through by. We GT. They go on the online and they pull up their online the bank statement. Yeah, they're looking good. But look at the millions now, boy. When Anil took Adolphus Daniel to the same Larry Hawaii, and Hawaii says Anil brought Adolphus Daniel to him. And that was the last he heard of that until the next time he heard $34 million for Adolphus Daniel. Live sport. 34 million. We ain't got to take a chalk, not a pen, pencil, or a paper clip. Right? But it was too expensive to send these children to the US to save their life. But writing a check for Adolphus for 34 million, nothing wrong with that. That is okay. We ain't care what it is, but it was too expensive to send them to the US. It would cost 1/10 of what it would cost. So send them to Colombia. And you know what they love to say? Rowley say, who dead, dead, and who live, live. Well, that was them. Send them to Colombia. And who dead, dead, and who live, live. So 6 dead, no problem. But how many others live? Right. But now let's sing in that stupidness about Rowley say who dead, dead, and who live, live. Just keep that in all your mind. That was the policy of the government that you all supported. Send people, children, 4 months old, to Colombia. And if they're dead, they're dead. And if they live, they live. But all the crying crocodile tears, no one coming to so you're coming to press conference to hug up teddy bear. And look, Anyway, I don't use profanities, so don't worry, you ain't gonna hear none roll off my tongue here. All these instances I could give all your money. The building in Santa Rosa, the old massive house that Jack Warner told us was offered to him by the late Bernard Dulal Whiteway for 17 million, and he said it with that. The most he was going to offer Bernard was 13, and Dulal Whiteway said, no, we ain't taking that. 17 million. But they went and bid for $234 million to turn it into a prison to lock up over 8,000 African youth, at-risk youth. 234 million. That's separate and apart from the 50 million that they had spent to lease it before, and how much money they spent to outfit. The 120 million they spent to outfit Paris Building, number 1 Alexandra Street. The $43 million that they pay in rent for 5 years and never use the building. $1 million a year in security, so $5 million in total. Right? Almost $200 million they spent on that building, 2010 to 2015, and not one blasted public servant stepped foot inside it. That money could have saved those 6 lives. But 1/10, it cost them 1/10 because that is what is important, right? It had no kickback from that. All your wretches. Anyway, it's already 12:55. And again, I wanted to, should I touch on Brent Thomas? But folks, I don't know when I'll get around to touch the Brent Thomas, but I need to play this, right? Because all who was vexed about Kafra Campbell and what he said, that wasn't what upset me. Let me play for you what upset me. So last week, on another episode of Captain Clueless and Professor Misinformation, they decided to interview one Robert Amar. I don't know how many of you all heard that interview, but somebody called me. I don't listen to them, but somebody called me to ask me if I was listening. I said no. They said, well, you need to listen and you need to address that issue. I said, all right, no problem. I'll listen to it. And I listened to it. Let me get this here.
Information.
Here's another craving indulgence moment. But a craving indulgence to listen to before I play that. Let me see if I get this here. Because these two individuals reminded me of somebody when I listened to that. Them and Amar giggling like some little schoolgirls. Right? Let me get this here. Let me turn off this. See if I get this thing here. Forgive me, just now. There's been so many things that I save. Let me see if I get this here. Where is it? Where is it? So apparently, the week before, they interviewed Philip Edward Alexander. They asked him questions of an economic nature, and Mr. Alexander told them, well, that is not my forte. But if all you want to get the answers to those questions, you need to talk to one Robert Amar. So they decided to talk to one Robert Amar. Right? Let me get this here. Is it this one, boy? Yeah. Let me turn this off. Right. Connect this here. Right. Where is it? Is it this one, boy? This one?
I've listened to your black ass talk all day about how much you can't stand black folk.
Ain't two of them in the history of the world that's worth a squirrel for.
Well, how much you love white folk?
Best thing the good Lord ever did for the planet Earth.
Ruckus, you black as ace of spades, man.
I don't see the need for you to go and insult the man after a game of checker. We've been reminiscing all day, looking in each other's eyes, acting like we like each other. Now you got to go ahead and remind me of my ailment.
Ailment?
That's right. You heard of vitiligo? Shoot, well, I got re-vitiligo. Every year my skin just seems to get blacker and darker and blacker and then more darker. It's the opposite of what Michael Jackson got. Lucky bastard.
Ruckus, how could you possibly love white people so much?
It's easy. Have you ever looked at them? White man just a joy to be around. They smell like lemon juice and pledge furniture cleaner. And look at them. They gave us discipline, jobs, put structure in our lives, took us out the jungle. And what we do to show our appreciation? We march up and down the street. We vote. Carry on. Ingrates.
Well, how about this?
Game. Nigga.
When I listened to those two interviewing Robert Amar, Uncle Ruckus came to mind. Right? Uncle Ruckus came to mind. That's why I had to play him. See, all the things he tell you that the white man do for them. Took us out of the jungle. And how did we show our gratitude? By marching up and down civil rights and all of that. Ingrates. I'll play that. Listen to this. So,
Afternoon to Mr. Amar. Mr. Amar, good afternoon.
Afternoon, JPC. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This you're live on the street 919 FM.
Right. Boy, I make it there, boy. I make it there.
You make it
919 district.
Welcome to the future of Talk Radio. Welcome to the future of Talk Radio.
I hear you complaining and quarreling all the time, but stop quarreling about nobody else listening. They're quarreling.
Well, you're live on the most popular program.
Oh yeah. You hold your words there, brother. Hold your words there.
No, listen. It's the most popular program on the street.
On the street?
Yes. On the street, 919 FM.
Yeah.
All right.
Good. Okay. I'll accept that.
Right. So we spoke to Mr. Alexander.
We had an interview, last week we had an interview with Mr. Philip Alexander, and I was questioning him about our history with regards to our economical history, right? Because based on information that I gathered, I know back in the 70s, we had one of the biggest oil boom under Dr. Eric Williams. And then Dr. Eric Williams passed in 1980. And approximately 5 years after that, when the NAR came in, the country had no money and we had the doorsteps of the IMF. So I was asking the question, where did the money go? Where did all that oil boom money that we had in the 1970s up to 1978, 79? At that time, our currency was like $1.85 to $1 US or $2 to $1 US and all these things. And lo and behold, at the government change in 1986, and they were like, we were in an economical crisis. So I was like, where all that millions and billions of dollars that we had in a windfall of oil money just disappeared into thin air. And Philip said, you will have some of that information, for us.
You may be
more privy to
enlighten us
about what really happened
went on
in that era.
Well, the Street 919 is a very popular radio station for a particular political party. So when I make my statement now, and then they have people like earlier that you're talking them, they get in trouble. I don't want them in a problem with all the rest.
I would like you to make your contribution this afternoon without fear or favor. You see on this platform
on this
here,
show,
make your comments without fear or favor. We would just like you to be honest to Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah.
So let me point you this way. Trinidad and Tobago has unfortunately never had a proper economic plan in place to chart a course that could withstand a test of the international market. And by that I mean, this country has been governed by a commodity called oil. And it means to say that commodity, we are not in a way where we have any control over it. So when those times reach that price bump up, like it's going to happen in the next couple of months based on the new war that is taking place between Israel and Iran, the country has to be able to be conservative with its spending and be reasonable with its savings. Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately, only began saving money under the Pandey era, when Brian Quaitong put in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, which was called a different thing at that time.
Wow. Wow.
Where money collected in that business with that business was set aside and put for longevity of the populator. And they wrote some laws and things like that to help protect it. I mean, at this stage of the game, under the pandemic that recently occurred, Trinidad was able to wean on that and take some of that money to help us through the difficult period. But the reality is that it starts from bad planning from 62 all the way to 2024. Even up to now, we have to say that the only era that we had any plan that seemed to have worked was under the Pandey time and to some extent under the Kamla Prasad Bisasa time.
You sure you know what you're saying there, Mr. Amar?
Of course I sure. I do have a few information.
So the only time this country had some kind of economic plan is under the two regime of the UNC?
That is correct.
Wow.
You have to understand that cultural antecedents plays an important role. So for the ones that are explaining, Indo-background culture is about save and not spend. Afro-background culture is about spend and spend.
Wow. Wow.
So when Afro-Trinidadians or Trinidadians get into the office, they spend a lot of money. When Indo-Trinidadians get into the office, they spend, but they also save.
All right.
It's in their culture to save.
It's in their DNA. All right, so you can't take that out. You can't take this part out of the line.
Wow.
All right.
So we have to start now and ask ourselves, that's where all the money goes. So if you look at the situation today, I could tell you where about $18 billion gone. 18.
So the East Indians have a culture, they spend and save, but the Afro culture is to spend and spend. Wow. Right? The Afro culture is to spend and spend. And the only time we had any type of savings or any sort of economic plan was under Pandey, and to some extent is under Prasad Bisesa. I wonder if Robert Amar ever heard about Vision 2020. I wonder if Robert Amar is aware of who created the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, not the Interim Revenue Stabilization Fund, which the thinking or the rationale was we would save some money. So in those years when oil price fall and we have a shortfall in income and revenue from the energy sector, we could pull a little something from the savings to be able to show up the shortfall. And Mr. Manning came, and that was under Pandey. Mr. Manning came and said, here what? We need to refine this thing. This is not just about putting aside a little savings for a rainy day. We need to put aside money for the future generations, right? That are yet to come. That is the heritage side of it. Mr. Pandey didn't do that. But you see this mindset that Amar have and telling them, well, you know, the Afro-Trinidadian traditional mindset is spend and spend. And the East Indians is to spend and save. I want to ask Mr. Amar, who created the Unit Trust Corporation? I am absolutely certain, if it is that you were to go and do a check of the majority of the customers, the clients of the Unit Trust Corporation, you would see they belong to a particular ethnic group. The same one that he says their mindset is to spend and spend. I want to ask Mr. Amar, the credit union movement, if you were to go, I am certain, and you were to do an assessment of the majority of the customers of the credit union movement, you would see which ethnic group they belong to. But he telling you, African people is only to spend and spend. So no say there was no economic plan under Patrick Manning. So when Patrick Manning came up with the idea of the IFC, right? The International Financial Center, which is what the waterfront, the mindset behind the waterfront, because Mr. Manning said, can't build so anymore, we need to go up. It was Lee Kuan Yew as Prime Minister of Singapore, said if we want to attract foreign capital and we want all the big wigs and the big shots of the developed world to come to our country and spend the money here and develop the country, what we need to do, we need to go up. The IFC was supposed to house a number of international interests, which Mr. Manning and his administration was speaking to, who was supposed to come and set up headquarters here. In fact, I always recall that one of the entities that I believe negotiations, if not completed, was almost complete, that Lehman Brothers was supposed to come here. That investment house from New York that was over 100 years old, they were supposed to come and set up office, their regional office at the waterfront. Unfortunately, they were a casualty of the global economic crisis 2008-2009 that saw Lehman Brothers go out of business. After over 100 years of operation, they went out of business. But they called Amar to ask where the money went, right? To ask him where the money went. And for he to come and tell you, there was no economic plan, except under Pandey and Kamla. What was Kamla's economic plan? I wish Mr. Amar could have elucidated and elaborated on that. And I see there's somebody here on the Facebook by the name of Richard Duku saying here, so what all you're doing different, you just come on to continue to feed the same propaganda that has been going on for years. Saying what you, sir, are not adding any value to the future. You are also receiving something. You know I'm receiving something. What am I receiving? What am I receiving? I have always said this is a labor of love. He goes on to say, I am receiving something for this, so you are also tainted with the same blood. May the good Lord show you people the light. What light? You've seen the light? You've seen the light, Mr. Duku? Well, perhaps you could tell me, since according to Mr. Amar, under Kamla Prasad Bissaso, there was an economic plan. Why the exchequer went from 10 billion, in overdraft to the highest it had ever been, 33 billion. You could help me with that, Mr. Duku, since you know, right? These are the things that we speak about. This is what we are adding to the future. All of the malfeasance that took place between 2010 to 2015, which people like you choose to ignore and pretend. But when it is that you have people like Dinesh Rambali and Rodney Charles doing live or doing press conferences and all of the things that we're telling you all now, that we've been telling you all for years, people like you, Mr. Duku, and all they're saying is PNM propaganda, but now that people who belong to the belly of the beast come in and telling you all that. And what you all rather than, you can't say, well, it ain't coming from the PNM, it's coming from the UNC. And people who hold significant office in the UNC, well, you're quick to call them PNM operatives. There wasn't PNM operatives until now. And they are Nimakaram and whatever other dirty names you all want to call them, right? Because they're speaking out. And they are now telling you all the very same thing that the PNM have been saying about the party that you support for the longest while. So, but to come here to tell me about I receiving something, you know I receiving something, what am I receiving? I've told you all I do very well in my professional life. I don't really need to receive anything. But when it is that you have parliamentarians who have hopes of becoming part of the next government and want to be ministers, could call a press conference and lie blatantly in the face of the evidence being lucidly clear. And I'm talking about people like Saddam Hussein, who could come and lie in a press conference and say that everything Vincent Nelson said about giving money to Ram Logan and Ramdeen was a work of fiction, and that Vincent Nelson could be a fiction writer. But then you have Dinesh Rambali, who could call a press conference and basically come and say, well, you know, one of the things people are concerned about is the money that was paid to that went into the account and all of these things. But all don't talk about that. You know what? Because people like you who wanted to focus on indemnity and Faris. But you had nothing to say when Nelson gave dates, times, amounts, and provided documentary evidence to show where he gave the money. All you ain't talk about that. But want to come here to tell me about what it is that I continue to feed the same propaganda. What propaganda? Tell me what I said here this morning that is propaganda. I challenge you as I always do. Where is the propaganda? Because anything I say, I support it by reading an article and I quote my source. I quote my source. That is the fundamental difference between me and those two clowns on that radio program. That is the difference between me and those members of your party who continue to push folly every day and you will lap it up. And the oil boom and the oil money went through Trinidad, they go like a dose of salt. Foolishness. So when it is them two clowns, have Robert Amar come in to talk about the culture of the African man is to spend and spend. But the culture of the East Indian person is to spend and save. What did Kamala Prasad-Bissessa say? When it is that they pledged the Green Fund as collateral to be able to drive up the overdraft in central bank. That is saving. What did they save? Tell me, what did they save? How much? They had to borrow to put money into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. What did they save? Under this administration, for the first time in 14 years, we had a budget surplus. What did they save? But you want to come here with your nonsense. Look, anyway, let me anyway. Let's just play a little bit more.
$18 billion went in the petrochemical industry that is now closed down. Petrotrin, for all intents and base, used a hell of a lot of money to try to do things that would be better. But unfortunately, we continue to not respect the people that have the ability, and we continue on this partisan kind of trajectory that put people who we like, not people who could deliver results.
Wow.
And you have a common thing today with the 11 children that died. Under both the Pandey regime and under the Kamala regime, you never had that amount of neonatal deaths in such a short space of time.
Yeah.
It's not that they didn't have neonatal deaths, but in this case, in less than a month, we get 11.
Yeah.
So it's gone.
And imagine you're walking.
Got 11, yeah.
Imagine you're walking in February and you get 2. And in March, you get 2. And you still end up with 11 as of April, you get 7 more in April. How is that humanly possible? Now, I see the Regional Health Authority put the fellow on leave, whoever it is, they didn't give his name. But he's going on leave as of today, immediately, which is a good move. But if the government of the past was doing similar things like that, when they made mistakes, then today we'd have more money. But instead of doing that, they hold on to the person, like Malcolm Jones, and he cost the country about $11 million and he never had that conference.
Yes, wow.
The same thing happened under WASA.
Under what?
The same under WASA, Water and Sewage Authority. You have endless people employed.
Can you elaborate a little bit because like heavy and
I lost. Yeah.
Well, okay. So you have a company to run. It's like you with your house. Your income is $20 and your expense is $25, but you don't know where you're going to find. And you have a cut down. But because a lot of those institutions are supported by the government, TTSC, airport authorities, all these statutory bodies, if they make a mistake, they let them the money. And nobody is held accountable, not even the leader of the country. And in both dispensations of the recent past, both the Kamala Prasad-Bissessa and the Rowley, both of them have to be held responsible, because both of them have bad spending. It is about having a proper plan, and when you move along, if the plan looks like it's not going to work, a la desalination water, how much it does cost us for that? And still we went and renegotiated and renewed the contract without better terms and conditions.
And who did that renegotiation of the desalination contract? Who tied us into that contract until 2034? Who did that? The same woman under whose tenure he said that there was savings. Yes, there was savings. The same woman who decided that we're going to get rid of the smelter because the smelter will give all your cancer and kill all you, right? And was paying $42 million a month for electricity that we couldn't use. Electricity that was supposed to go to the smelter plant. Since you canceled the smelter plant and brought nothing to replace it, right? After making promises to the people of La Brea. Telling them, don't worry, yeah, we will get rid of the smelter, so we'll get no cancer, but we will build a shipbuilding and ship repair facility for you all, so you wouldn't lose out on the jobs. Where is that ship repair and shipbuilding facility? Where is it? But instead, $42 million a month to TGU for electricity that we couldn't use. But you couldn't afford to send six children to the US to save their life. But Mr. Duku want to come here and tell me what am I adding to the future. Let me tell you what I added, Mr. Duku. Information, not propaganda as you call it. Information that is supported by fact. So when people go to the polls next year to cast their ballot, and who want to ram their finger in the ink up to their ears, know what it is they're voting for. perhaps you should go and take a read of the UNC's economic transformation plan. I don't have time to discuss today Mrs. Prasad-Bissasa's claim that the country is broke. I wanted to get into that, but I don't have enough time today. So I had to see when I could get the time to revisit that. And again, interrogate the UNC's National Economic Transformation Plan, where for them, she's talking about country broke, right? And Rowley this and Rowley that. But her answer to fix the problem of the country's brokenness is when she come in to reduce corporation tax from 30 and 35% to 18. And that will bring more revenues. You know why? Because the companies will now take the tax savings and invest in the business and hire more people and make more money and pay less taxes than they pay in under Rowley. But for you, Mr. Duku, that making sense. That is Kamlanomics, right? It makes sense, according to her. You know what's the solution to the problem with respect to the country's foreign exchange? Is to allow the exchange rate to slide to wherever and let it be determined strictly based on demand and supply, right? We're not touching the country's foreign reserves. We'll build it back up and just leave it there so as a price we could look at, according to her. That making sense. And make our imports more expensive, but that is not going to drive up the cost of living. And that making sense to you, Mr. Duku. Anyway, let me just play a little more of this, folks.
That terms and conditions.
Mr. Amar, what I want to find out, right? There's a propagated narrative that is being spewed by PNM supporters that under the Equilibrium regime, no form of corruption happened.
Oh boy. Well, just tell those PLM people to go and dig up G mines.
Exactly.
Just tell them dig up G mines. Just tell them go and check the history of Ellis Park and the airlines.
Wow.
Just tell them to check about O'Halloran and what happened with those edifices that was built in Canada that it still now operates.
So our country constitution was built and gerrymandered in such a way that politicians could thief and get away with it.
Well, our people have been put in a susceptible position that politicians have been able to use ethnicity or race, as they call it. It's not race, it's ethnicity, to play one part of the ethnic group against the next and blame one for the next.
Okay, I understand. So why is the politicians can get with everything? They just blame the other party or they blame the other race?
But blame the other party for sure, because that is what has happened. Mm-hmm. You will hear already. When I listened to Munilal the other day calling for the Minister of Health to get fired. That's the wrong person to get fired. He should be calling for the man that the Northwest Regional Authority fired, the man who is responsible. And okay, they send him on. So let's hope there is a change in the attitude of accountability coming from this.
Do you think that we should be calling for the Minister of National Security to be fired?
He for sure should be fired, because at the end of the day, he is under the guise that he is not responsible for your security and my security. That will tell us.
Yeah, he told us. And what is your take on the renewal of the Commissioner of Police right now?
I think the same woman going to get back an extension because the time is too short. We are already at the end of April, if you want to call it that, and she's going on May the 14th. And there is no way they sit down and ask ourselves, because they have never counted where it went. Eh?
That is it.
Correct.
That is it. Like that.
Because TC, it is designed for that, right? It's what you call the rainy day fund.
Right.
So if something go wrong, you don't want the people to suffer. The problem I have with it is that people still suffer. Yes. Because although they had that money, if we sit down and ask ourselves, because they have never counted where it went,
that is it.
Correct.
That is it.
Correct.
They went there, they took money,
but they didn't do nothing.
And then they were getting money from
the pharmaceutical companies and
outside, right? Different entities outside. But where did all of this money go?
Yeah.
But again, we start sitting at the beginning where there was no plan. So if you get in and let me suppose there's a rat and they go in a house and it has cheese, you go leave the cheese.
Wow.
If they have a captain to watch you, to say, well, if the rat communities are going to run him down.
Mr. Amar, based on the history of Trinidad and Tobago from our independence to now,
That's what I want to get to.
Because I was in my humble opinion, I was comparing that the money that we waste here, we could have been better than Dubai or the Dubai of the Caribbean, per se, right? We were supposed to be, right, the spectacular country, the richest country in the Caribbean, where people will flock to come and do business and all that, right? Can you elaborate that? Do you think that what I was saying was real? Because people may think I am talking stupidness.
You are talking stupidness.
No, it is real because we were the richest country in the Caribbean.
Okay.
The problem is we just unfortunately have bad leadership.
You see, this is very difficult.
The issue I wanted to, that's what I want, the last part I wanted from them, right? These two clowns always talking about Qatar and Dubai and Trinidad and Tobago should have been like Dubai and Dubai and Dubai. And because Dubai, according to Heavy, later on, because Dubai discovered oil after we, and now look at where Dubai is. And it's like these two clowns don't understand and can't comprehend what Dubai, the kind of oil money Dubai had, we never had. For the simple reason, the kind of oil production Dubai had, we never had. So at our best, our highest earning years, as the boom as he loved to call it, if we were producing between 220 to 250,000 barrels of oil per day, we were producing plenty. As opposed to Dubai, who producing over 1 million barrels of oil per day. So if a man producing 250,000 barrels of oil per day, while another man producing $1 million barrels of oil per day, who making more money? The man who producing the 1 million is earning 4 times the man who producing the 250. So does it not stand to reason, by definition, the man who making 4 times the amount of money because he producing more oil could do more in terms of the development than the man who making 250? Because he could do 4 times as much as the man who making the 250. But these two block-headed clowns, it just can't stick. That is not just about having oil money. It is the quantum. Look at our oil production today is about 57,000 barrels of oil per day. 1,000. Guyana is producing 675,000 barrels of oil per day. You understand the difference? We never produced that. So at its embryonic stage, Guyana is producing close to 3 times what we were producing in our heyday. So obviously they will make more money, and the more money you have is the more development you could do. So when I hear them talking about where the money went, and you would swear that between 1956 to when the PNM was birthed, to when Eric Williams died, nothing took place in this country. No money is spent, nothing is built, nothing is due. They just take the money and thief it. The only thing that built was the towers that O'Halloran built in Canada. But in Trinidad, nothing happened. The government didn't hire nobody. They weren't paying for education. They weren't paying for security. They weren't paying for health. They weren't paying for nothing. Nothing do. They didn't build no road. They didn't build no school, no hospital. Nothing was done between 1956 to 1986. It's only when the NAR came into office in 1986, things started to happen. So all the oil boom and whatnot, nothing was done. Nobody benefited. They didn't have any programs for pension to help people to give money for disability, public, nothing. It had nothing doing. No subsidies, no transfers. So I don't know where the money came from to create Caroni 1975 Limited. So apparently these companies, these foreign companies that came together to create Caroni 1975, it was given to the government for free. The companies that came together to create Petrotrin, it was given to the government for free. We didn't have to pay for them thing, right? Nothing. There's no public transport, no nothing. Eric Williams days, the government did absolutely nothing with the money. And these two clowns have that on repeat. And you have people calling that station and supporting that and telling, have you already doing a real good job, boy? Keep it up. Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. And then you have people like Mr. Duke who want to come here to talk nonsense. But I don't have the time to challenge you today, sir. 770-176. I don't have the time. It's already a past and I went home at time as normally take course, but we'll have to deal with that at another time. There's too many things to deal with. I swear. I ain't able to know. Mr. Ye, call me back. Call me back. Hello, good afternoon. Just now, 1 sec. Give me 1 second, Mr. Yes. Let me just connect this thing here. Hold on, hold on. So, turn this off. Let me turn this on. Connect this. 1 second, Mr. Yes. Hello, good afternoon. Hello? Hello? I don't know what's going on here, but what is this? What is this? Hello? Hello? I don't know what's going on here. Just now, give me 1 sec. I don't know what's going on with this phone check. Right. Okay, just now. 1 second now. I think I get it now. Hold on, Mr. H. Just... Right. So we're switching between devices. These things tend to happen. Right, we should be cooking with gas there. Hello? Hello? Yes, sir.
Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Very good. I've said this before, and it's worth saying it again. Why these people, these Africans on that station, like everybody in the UNC, all the Indians, they only talk about O'Halloran and Privat. I wonder if they are aware of the fact that when Eric Williams died, he had 3 deputies, Chambers, Kamaluddin Mohammed, and Errol Mahabir. I wonder if they know that in terms of seniority in the PNM, Mohammed and Mahabir were senior to Chambers. But I wonder if they also know that when a replacement for Eric Williams had to be made in 1981, March, Ellis Clark consulted the hierarchy of the PNM, and they recommended George Chambers as the man to replace now deceased Eric Williams. Why you think those 2 others who had seniority over Chambers as members of the PNM and as very senior people inside here holding ministerial portfolios, I wonder if they know why the PNM hierarchy did not recommend either of those 2 men. Well, let me tell them, in case they didn't know, those 2 men's names were mired in corruption. And I could say it without hesitation here because they are now both deceased. And there are many examples, you know. There are many examples. I wouldn't burden you with too many, but just to let you know and to let them know that by the time Eric Williams died in 1981, for years before that, he had taken his speech from Kamaluddin Mohammed. I wonder if they know that. Let me tell you why. In the late 60s or early 70s, Eric Williams had come up with an idea of hybridizing the cattle industry in Trinidad. And he came up with something called, well, the Buffalipso experiment. That is, it was intended to import cattle from New Zealand and clone it with the local breed of cows, of cattle. And the result of that would have been something called a Buffalipso. That would have been a hybridization of our local cattle and New Zealand cattle. Do you know when those animals landed in Trinidad? They just vanished from the face of the earth in this country. You know who's the Minister of Agriculture then? Kamaluddin Mohammed. Kamaluddin Mohammed. And you could ask any senior PNM person about that, and they will corroborate what I'm telling you. From that day to the day Eric died, he never spoke to Kamaluddin Mohammed again because it was riddled in tiffin and corruption. Aaron Mahabir, while on the face of it, he was credited as the big negotiator, the man who would talk to the trade unions and so on and so on. You know, the trade unions representing government departments and so on. There was always a spin in the tail. In the late 70s, the Eric Williams administration came up with something called government-to-government projects. That is to say, using our government facilities and inviting foreign governments to enter into contracted work to build major projects in Trinidad. The Eric Williams Medical Complex being one, and the Hall of Justice being another one. And for the Hall of Justice, it was a foreign company called Wimpy. And for the Eric Williams Hospital, it was a French company called Sodeted. And there was so much corruption and thief in India. People of a certain age group would know that at that time, people associated Era Mahabir with the Japanese garden as part of the corruption in deals with these foreign companies and foreign governments. He was fortunate to have them construct what was called a Japanese garden, and he was infamously known as the Japanese garden minister. So it gets me very upset and very angry when people keep talking, only calling the names of Halaran and Prefat. I am not saying that they didn't thief, but they were not the only thieves. And significantly, the UNC never called the names of the other two. And you know why? You know why? Because it is a question of kinship, ethnicity, and race. But they know that those two fellows were thieves. And that is the reason why neither Kamaluddin Mohammed nor Era Mahabir was considered by the PNM hierarchy as the man to replace Eric Williams as the new Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Reason? Their names were tainted with allegations which PNM people actually knew to be a fact, with allegations and stories of wanton corruption by those two deputies. Senior to Chambers in service, senior in many ways, but also senior in terms of corrupt activities. That is why the simple, unflappable George Chambers was recommended as the man to replace Eric Williams. And that is how it became a thing. So when these wretches keep talking about O'Halloran and Prefat, you see when you're calling those names to satisfy me that you're serious, call Kamal and Errol too. The two dons in Eric Williams' cabinet. And I just wanted to put that on the table today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I see where Veronica Jack is also mentioning about the Japanese garden. I'd never heard about that one before. So thank you so much, Mr. Yates. Always on point with the historical side of things. And I'm glad that he mentioned that, because you see, contrary to what we heard just now about the narrative being propagated by PNM people that there was no corruption. PNM people never denied that, yes, there was corruption and the usual suspects, the names that are called. But when it is PNM people are accused of corruption, you know what you're saying is the UNC. That is UNC propaganda. But when anytime their names called and people get charged, is PNM. Is the PNM. That is PNM propaganda. Always. They don't do no wrong. Let me get it here. Just right. Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Dominic.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
All right. Well said by Mr. Yates, because I remember I remember the box Calypso because my father used to marketing board in those days. And I remember the building of the Hall of Justice and what was being banded around. I remember those two things. I also remember the days when Bola and Amaro got the franchise to sell Toyota in Trinidad. And Toyota took off, and all the Ford cars and the British and Australian cars, people started to levitate towards the Japanese vehicles in around this time. Bolan started to make lots of money. Fortunately, his time reached, he passed on. And in the family, they chose Robert to run the establishment. Now, as far as I understand, well, that is something, but as far as I understand, Amar was taking vehicles and was owing the Japanese. But the Japanese continued giving Amar company vehicles. And when they called on them to pay some bills, they couldn't pay some bills, so Toyota levy on them. Now, that is something I see Toyota did around the world. So I think that should have some sort of scrutiny in it and some truth. That Toyota with they own vehicles, something you will give you the vehicles. But when it reaches a certain bill, a certain amount, they call on you to pay, and if you can't pay, they levy on you. So after he have lost that, I remember that too. I will tell you because I remember my father had to pay a bribe to get a vehicle from Amara. Pay a salesman a bribe, and I am sure that Robert Amaro knew about it because that was common knowledge. If you want a vehicle, and not only Amaro too, it happened in Ilamasi, that you had to pay, and a salesman could pull a thing for you in a couple of weeks or a month or so you'll get a vehicle. Now, Amaro went into a venture called the Caribbean Song Basin, and he was doing so much thing for the music industry, which was great, and I applaud him for it. But as Robert runs things, it's always him. He has to be the chief butler and wash cooker. So if he hires you as a professional in a field, he wants to tell you how to do your job. So the Caribbean Song Basin ended up in some problems and financial problems. And to save it, he wanted the help of the government. And as far as I understand, again, that to be corrected, the government should not have been involved in that with him running it. I mean, if the government will take taxpayers' money and say they must have a state. And that end up where it is today. So I think that is where Robert Amaro to be exact, because he has his brothers and them there, but basically Robert Amaro, who was running the head, and he was in charge of his brothers, siblings, and then in the business, he was the man who was running it after his father passed. And then with the Caribbean Song Basin, I think that was one of his ventures, which was a good idea and everything. I don't not say the man who come with good ideas and do paper. I think his problem is that he thinks he knows everything, which he doesn't. And that boss, I think he lost the Caribbean Song Basin, and he ended up where he is today. But Robert Amaro is in no position to talk anything about management and finances. I mean, you inherit an empire. Toyota, you don't have to sell Toyota. You just people come to you and they purchase Toyota. One of these whole number of selling vehicles, one of them is Toyota. And in Trinidad, Tobago, I can say Toyota is number one selling vehicle in terms of the quality and thing that the Toyota gives you. The price of Toyota is very, very expensive compared to the others. But if you buy a Toyota, you're guaranteed to have, you'll be very rare gas or gifts in a Toyota. And the resale value of a Toyota vehicle is very high. So Toyota is a number one choice for the Trinidadians, and he lost that. He inherited an empire and he lost that. So he become to tell us about those things. What about the monies we got back after how much 20 plus years of the same Pandy administration, same UNC administration with them first, and then we get back how much what? $131 million US dollars that we stand to get back from a UNC administration. And I can even go right now to EMBD, when based on what the Miami court said and the valuation of the properties from people who, with the minister who now has to put up a defense, and the racket has been, you know the kind of houses these people then purchase over the country's money, taxpayers' money. And this man had the gall to come and talk about what he said and how African people and running business and all kind of thing. I remember the last central bank governor who was in charge of the purse for Trinidad and Tobago after he was picked from down the line to put terror on it. Before he was fired because he was incompetent. You know, he told us, you know, he have money to pay public servants. You know, he think and fellas like Bruce and them who passed with Victor, Bruce and them fellas passed before him and them was more prudent than him. And what he talking about banking and who can run a business and finance, that is just a myth. And black people only must stop allowing these people to tell you these things. Because they can always tell all you, most of the prominent African people, we do go wrong boasting. But you could look outside and you could look into places like the big universities or the head of the UN, one of those world administration. You see a African in it, and the African is a treaty. So don't let them fool all and tell all that certain nonsense, because that thing they was doing and going to the schools and see the children and them who putting in the common entrance and who took common entrance. Most of them fade away. A lot of the Africans that don't get the opportunity, they couldn't even get in. At one particular time, you couldn't get into university. You had to go to places like Grenada and Jamaica and outside. You don't hear about these things. And those Africans that who do well end up getting nice, cushy jobs outside of Trinidad and Tobago. And they go on and think, but we just don't hear about them. We even had one came back from Lavantil and he was running the US Embassy here in Trinidad and Tobago. I met him personally and shook his hand. And he was from Lavantil and up the hill and up the top of Duke Street going up there. He from. He born up there. So don't let them fool all over that nonsense. Where Robert come with that kind of segregation, kind of foolishness. Nah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but you had those two fools. We say, Robert making sense. Robert is an expert when it comes to anyway. Hello, good afternoon. So, go on with this. Right.
Yeah, Robnan.
Yes, sir. Greetings.
Hey, what's up?
Hi, good man.
Listen, you can tell me where Robert Mao has qualification in economics and finance?
I wish I could.
Yeah, because, I mean, it was a painful segment to them. Very, 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 very. But it seems these fellas would take the time to listen to programs like this. And you listen to, like, Yates and Chance and so on. They would go and look for information, right? Like, for example, I am aware that the government from 1999 or so put out 5-year plans. They put out plans, and that is even before the oil boom. What they started to do as the government? They started to expand the road network, modernize and spread the electricity.
Mm-hmm.
They upgraded water and sewage. They created, in fact, the water and sewage authority because that only came in 1965 when the Act was passed. Right? They modernized transportation through the country. We had the public transport service corporation being set up on all the different bus companies that were around at the time but under the Public Service Transport Corporation. Education. So we started to get informed. What it do? It was put you in a nice interview by Mr. Marlon Gordon. I started this program, expand the every school network. Right? To get these in terms of what was the goal? Free primary and secondary education. That was something was unheard of up to the 60s. You understand? because it was an industry. Secondary school was a highly privatized and expensive endeavor once it didn't pass common entrance, or the exhibition as it then was. The oil monies also did what? They set up Point Lisa's industrial estate. They set up industrial estate in Arima, Point 14. They go Martin, the industrial, the Diamondville industrial estate is still long there, right? What we also did with the first wave of the oil money, you know what we did? We helped our Caricom brethren, we loaned large sums of money to Guyana. We put money into the establishment of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Right? We did that with the oil monies. You understand? And if we weren't for those subsidies, like have you TC talk at all, right? The book grant that people collected for years, right? That was only cut out during the entire time because of the structural adjustment regime, right? Where every year, every family, and you do not allow means test, primary and secondary school, you got that book grant. That's what it meant too, right? So it's very painful for the, I mean, if you want to call somebody on economic matters, you call Dr. Roger Hussein, not my favorite. You also have people like Dr. Marlene Arts, right? You even call somebody like Endurance Sajuan, even though she is heavily yellow tinted, she wears heavily yellow tinted glasses. But somebody can give an economic history of Trinidad and Tobago. The PNM government attempted to move us from an agrarian economy primarily to industrial economy. That is the fact. Because the returns from cocoa and coffee and sugar, number 3, were dwindling. Other producers came into the market that were able to produce more than us. They had Nicaragua, they had Cuba in the Caribbean, they had Costa Rica in terms of cocoa production. Right? And we had to look for other streams. Right? So it's very painful to hear, you know what I mean? I'm sorry if you get to talk about the Kafka Cambon situation.
Yes.
But I can see when I do them, through that interview with Mrs. Rambajan Mali, it's clear that he was stunned because he had been out and jogged by the Prime Minister. Because the move to claim Emancipation Day back to Africa is for a particular reason. When you see what's going on in the US, when you see what went on with when they try to bring a effigy of Hanuman into the Emancipation Day celebrations and procession and so on. You have to bring it home. They have to bring it home because when Mr. Manning would have sent a rival day, a UNC administration in 1996 said the holiday was henceforth be called Indian Arrival Day. That is fact. Nobody can challenge that. But you have a narrative where people, I feel like in the last year of the decade of persons of African descent as declared by the UN, you have to claim back something because these people are out there in the world, in the US, when you see what's going on with them trying to undermine AI education and ban books that talk about slavery and rewrite the history and so on. We, as the people who as the first to celebrate Emancipation Day, we have to keep the record straight and keep it on the forefront that what Emancipation depicts or celebrate or denotes is the freedom of African people from chattel slavery, which wasn't a gift to us, but it was just some purely economic reasons. When you go on to read the work of Dr. Eric Williams, Capitalism and Slavery, and how Europe underdeveloped Africa, that is Dr. Walter Redley. Right? Those facts incontrovertible. And I agree, I applaud Prime Minister for championing that and putting the focus where it needs to be. Like I said, Diamond, we have to play these inserts for us for our education and to show how the folly that's been spread by other people but it is very painful to listen to. But nonetheless, a good educational tool to show why your program, your Livable Majesty and others have spread the correct information outside here.
Mm-hmm.
Take care, brother, and thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. Hello, good afternoon. So,
Dominic.
leave it there. Leave it there. You go make me get cuss. You go make me get cussed.
Look here, boy. Who won't cuss you, Dominic?
All the other listeners.
Tell them that I talk too long. That is why. Let me say good morning to my sister.
Mm-hmm. Good morning to your sister.
You know she's at PNM?
Yes, I do that.
Hey, Dominic, up in Indianapolis, boy.
Oh, very good.
I came to look for my people.
Nice.
Anyhow, let me don't talk too long before they could really cuss you intro. Dominic, let me tell you an expert about Dr. Rowley and Philip Tracy. Do you remember the bacchanal that went on with the zip line, Dominic? $2.5 million. Dr. Rowley tell Tracy, listen to this, Dominic. Dr. Rowley tell Tracy, when you get into the Tobago House of Assembly, finish the zip line. Dominic, where she getting $2.5 million from? Who given she the $2.5 million to finish the zip line, Dominic? Dominic, you know who gave she the $2.5 million? I will leave it there for now.
Leave it there for now. We will discuss that on another day. Because all the information is not there, right? But anyhow, because I would have read with the company that anyway, we will talk about that at another time. So let me just get it here.
Hello?
Mr. Yates.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I just wanted to stick in one more point. More point. True to form. When Kamal Mohammed was not made prime minister, when Eric died, the whole of Mohammedville turned against PNL. Not only that, do you know that a former senior lecturer who writes in the Guardian on a Sunday, you will know who I'm talking about. Do you know he wrote a biography of Kamal Mohammed soon after Eric died and Kamal was not made prime minister? You know he wrote a biography on Kamaluddin Mohammed? I read the book twice. And in there, he made undisguised references to the fact that Kamal was not made prime minister because he was an Indian. As simple as that. And guess what? When Pandey became prime minister in 1995, he decided that he would embrace his Indian brother, who was sacrificed by the vindictive and racist PNN, who did not make him prime minister of this country. You know what Pandey did? In an open act of racial solidarity, he appointed Kamaluddin Mohammed as High Commissioner to CARICOM. In other words, as a reward for having not been made prime minister by this vindictive and racist PNM regime. That is what it is. And ultimately, the idea was that they went with Chambers because he was untainted. Let's get that very clear. There was nothing against his name. There was nothing against his name. And at the highest levels of the PNM, they did not want a perpetuation of the legacy of O'Halloran and Privat. And they decided to make that move so that they would erase and eradicate the memory and the memories and the legacy of O'Halloran and Privat. And their decision for not putting either of those two men to replace Eric Williams had to do simply with the fact that putting either one would be a continuation and a perpetuation of the O'Halloran and Privat era in PNM. That is what it is. But what the Indians in Trinidad do and have done, they say, oh, they didn't take Kamal and Nehru because they were Indian. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with their sordid reputation as ministers of government and having won the loyalty and the closeness to Eric Williams as his deputy political leader. And they betrayed him by thieving from here to that kingdom come. Chambers did have that nastiness against his name. And the rationale behind that, as I said just now, they did not want to continue that ugly legacy of O'Halloran and Privat. And putting either one there would have been virtually endorsing the corruption of O'Halloran and Privat. And that's why it didn't put them. It had nothing to do with race. It had to do with cleansing and purging the party of corrupt elements who brought the party to its knees over the years, since the late 50s going into the 60s. And putting Kamal and Error would have made no difference. Kamal or Error, no difference. Teams in the same vein. That is why they were not considered for leadership. But typical again, the Indians, via the UNC, they decided that they would coalesce and bring their beleaguered Indian brothers into the UNC fold. In other words, PNM don't want you, we want you. No wonder, regardless of what they say, the UNC will continue to be viewed as the harborers and the proponents of wanton corruption in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One second here. I could probably take a couple more quickly. I think I have someone on hold. Just so I go out. Give me 1 sec. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, Don. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Family done senile, right?
What's that?
Family done. The senile, then old age home.
Yeah.
Because you had deaths on the fourth hand and he remained.
Mm-hmm.
So how it is now children die? The miracle happened. The virgin brain that was died back to life. How was right for them to stay then? But the thing must go down. Name one child he killed. And if you have proof he killed a child, call to the police. The UNC have double standards. And the standards are against PNM, but for them. Mama, did you cry for children who died? The boy who got his hand, first-degree burn, got a skin graft, a days-old Karma, did you cry for him? You were a teddy bear or whatever wrong. What you had in your hand for that child, children like him. Hawaii, okay? $0.something million. One man got there. Obscene, loud, and scandalous. That money could help children. But you know what? Hawaii rights. The one man rights or the many rights, the many lives. His blood matter. Because he was a grown up. But what children? the parents first. Nobody parents first little smile, the first coup. Didn't matter. It matter then, but matter now. Long time to something, Kenyan people, hear me well, eh? Since we do not save, start saving. Do not patronize any Indian place. Since we do not save, start to save. Invest in yourself. Invest in people of your own liking. Because we are trampled upon and called nothing. Come election time, what's my vote? No, darling. Wrong person. Dom, I bless you.
Thank you.
I bless every Kenyan person. I bless you and Cabal. I bless the Bunting family. I speak well over you, that your days may be, because God said, before you was formed, he called you to be. And I agree with God's word with Kenyan people. He called you to be. And Psalm 23, because God is your shepherd, you will not want. He has prepared for you a table in the presence of your enemies. Goodness and mercy. And you anoint your head with oil. You shall eat from the abundance of his household, and you will drink from the stream that rejoices. For a father's house of many mansions, and you shall receive an abundance of God. From his hands and from his heart, I bless you. I speak well over you, over Jenny, over Brian, over Mr. Yates. I bless every Kenyan person who typed on the speech. I speak well over you, which will be important. You will be the next greatness. Plumbers, carpenters, entrepreneurs. You will have the mind of Christ. And you have the mind of Christ, is from the mind to the hand will flow. So have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Whew, it's time 2:06. Eric, call me back, quick. Hello, good afternoon.
Actually, I don't have much money on my phone, boy.
Well, come on, well, yeah, go ahead and come on.
All right.
Let's see here. Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
You see, what I really like on the TikTok on my phone. That is why I can't really think now.
Right.
That's all right. Good afternoon to all the listeners, the viewers, the callers of debunking facts and facts and stubborn things. Now, I have a situation here that they would have raised relative to the interview with Latrin and Latrinson, right? Relative to what Robin Omar or Amar would have said about the African population that spend, and they don't save, right? This country had three opposition in the last how much years of independence. That is the NER, the Pandya administration, and the Kamala Prasad administration, right? What development that those three administrations brought forth to this country? Let me remind them, back in Robinson days, and they imposed VAT, value-added tax, when they would have gone to the IMF. But don't forget that. Back in Panday time, where we had the airport bacchanals, the airport scandal, right? Well, this administration under Kamala, they did the cake, the ingredients, the oven, the stove, everything, and go with it. Because
out of my entire life living in this country, I never see so much a corruption under this woman. For 5 years she said this country 55 years back, and people in this country who still 14 years later supporting this woman, not seeing that this country have been going through so much of problems. Every single ministry in this country that these people tainted. What they tainted is what they forget to tainted. So you mean to tell me, after all what transpired on that, these people are they telling me in my face that the government at present ain't doing nothing to develop the country? When Kamala and them was there at oil at $120 a barrel, you had 29 seats. You had 3/5 majority in parliament. You could have proclaimed laws, passed bills, you name it. All you didn't have the country at heart. All you had a modus operandi to go in there and thief, and friggin' thief. Right? When you're coming to my face now and telling me, right, with this deaths of these 11 newborn babies, right, that the Minister of Health should be fired, and the government should be fired, and Dr. Roddy should resign and co-election, right? But you have a crooked mayor for the penal debate, not mayor, chairman for the penal debate, who have a fake doctor degree, right? Championing the cause, right? When they get those scrubs, them things that's used for surgery, the kind of the thing that's used for surgery now, but the thing is tiny back, Dominic.
The what?
The thing that's used when they do surgery now. Them what I call it. But anyway, they was able to get that, and they gone having a big protest down in Kuva, demanding to open the Kuva hospital, right? What was what Dr. already said about that area? Kamala and them build that hospital. For those who don't know geology and geography, they build that hospital on an earthquake fault line. So if an earthquake of any magnitude of 5 point and higher or to hit this country, the one for which the over $1 billion is spent for hospital will come to naught. They ain't telling people that what they did. You saw one hospital in Kuva, nothing wrong with that. But you all built it in an earthquake fault line. So if something was to happen now, an earthquake or destruction like that, what will happen to the hospital? That money, taxpayers' money going on the drain again. But you see, it's about party, not country. Yeah, so with Captain, as you say, Captain Clueless and Professor Misinformed, right? Them had to stay right there and lap up all Kamala vomit and inhale all the political fumes on that she dress to get political relevance in the program in the evening. You understand? That is why I had to say, because them is a disgrace, because they are upholding the foolishness that taking place in this country that at present, and the only blaming the government is the UNC who refused up to the vote for the Deputy Commissioner and this thing. They refuse to support. You know why, Dominic? It will make the government look good. And they don't want that. Their agenda is to have the government at present be wicked and they can't fix crime and everything is bad under them. You understand? But I know they can fool people some of the time, but they can't fool people all the time. So come 2025, I know what my right thinking citizens in this country have to do. Because if all they do it and these people come back here, they have no Trinidad and Tobago again enough. So we just sit down and put that through a thick skull. Take up your tanty, your nanny, your bougie, convince those who are undecided
Let them know what is at stake at present. And we at the various platforms and social media will put the information out there for you all. So you all will know what to expect if you all put these people out there, put these people back inside there, which I know they wouldn't be. Right? But all is being said, Dominic, good program as usual. You have a blessed day, and to all the listeners and the callers, all be safe, have a productive week. Long term listening.
Thank you. Hello, call. It is 2:15. So I can take one more before we cut off for today. We've already gone past the usual time. Brian.
Yeah, very quickly. Good afternoon to you, Dominic.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon to your callers and listeners. Dominic, just little snippets, really. You are quite correct. I am one of those who did not know who the leader of the Emancipation Support Committee was.
Mm-hmm.
Or is, I should say. I knew who he was, but I don't know which president was it.
Zakia Wadada.
I am also one of those who do not have, never bought African wear.
Right.
I am also one of those who have never bought African artifacts in Trinidad, but I bought when I went up the island.
Right.
Because it was really, the way it was portrayed and that sort of thing. It's portrayed badly in Trinidad, but it was right in my eyesight when I went up the island. So you're quite correct. I believe many of people like me don't know who the leader of the Emancipation Support Committee is. So, just to be honest with you. Dominic, let me tell you this. All this other drama what's going on there is the high fact that the UNC has collapsed.
Yes.
And there's division in the UNC. So this whole week, this whole of last week, this is a new week, the whole of last week, I didn't hear Dennis Rambali name calling.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear Roshan Parry name call. If this was, remember when PNM had the internal elections and Karen University went up against Dr. Rowley, every single minute, every single day, every single station she was on.
Yes.
Every comment that she made was reported at length. But absolutely nothing about the collapse of the UNC. So all what is going on right now, especially with this baby issue, I mean, freedom chambers have gone so far to recommend certain things, and they want records way back of all who died from the beginning of this year. They ain't business for what happened recently, No, that ain't good enough. They want all the records of every baby that died, and all the records of how they died, and all of the autopsies, and they want compensation for everybody. It doesn't matter. All because Anand Ramlogan have issues to deal with before the court and Dr. Rowley. So it's just a matter of using this as an opportunity of pure hate. Pure unadulterated hate and spite. And they're going to continue dragging it. Every time you look at news in the night, you're getting full 7 to 10 minutes of this. And it will continue, it's not going to stop. So the amount of reaction protocol that have gone out there. And one person, one of the ladies who lost her child, she said, I just received a call saying that I am being represented, I don't know. So you understand what I'm trying to say?
Wow.
She didn't call nobody, they call her. You understand where this is going? So it has been politicized, and it will continue to be so, as though nothing happened before in other parts, with other governments. And that is what they want people to believe. People believe in it. Because when they do the people say on the UNCT television station, everybody's singing from the same hymn book, because nobody is doing research, nobody is checking back to understand all that went on before. So look out for it again this week. You understand?
Yes.
Look out for it in the Monday night forum. Right? Come look at that stood up there with all these set up people behind her. For Jolene John, when he's scratching, she didn't know what to do, she didn't know what to say. Like she want to get up to go to use the toilet. She was looking she head from side to side. She saying, look, what are you doing really doing here? But when it's all, I'm saying, no, me, I keep over. Nothing to say. You understand? But once they use Karen Nunes to share her name as though, that happened with the PNM, to Karen Nunes to share her person in Parliament. Karen Realty Share was using her own personal money to attempt to do something that she could not be successful with. So don't use Karen Nunes Teixeira. The people who are against you are those who are sitting right beside you. Mrs. Kamla Kosad Bisesa, who sat beside you all these years and knowing you were corrupt, knowing that you were stuffing the ballot boxes, or whoever it is you had doing that, so you could affect the elections, the internal elections of the UNC. And that is why you always call the Electoral and Boundaries Commission corrupt, because you can't get your clause, your corrupt clause on those ballot boxes. So when you lose, you look for an excuse. Even before the election, you do that. But you know in your internal election, you know what to do. Because you large and in charge. So that is why you will always be corrupt. And it's not only one person who has spoken about it. The man sitting up next to you, Duffy spoke about it. Fufu One spoke about it. Dennis Bali spoke about it. And all those who on the other side who haven't spoken as yet would know. So all those who want to say they're supporting you, damn well know that you're a liar and you are corrupt and you steal down to elections. So everybody knows who she is. You understand? But there are those who will tell, hey, when you go by God, look at each Cuba hospital there and only support me. Because a fool come up there and talk that shit when it's about crying. What happened to do with these babies that died? But people dying and getting shot and up and killed in Trinidad and Tobago and murdered and so on. But you have to add in all of that because why? Because he's clearly biased and corrupt, just like her. He supports corruption. So therefore, that is what those bunch of people were doing there. And as a matter of fact, that hospital, which has more beds for adults than children, was not even supposed to have been built there. It was supposed to be built in Camden under Bastio Pandey, but Bastio Pandey did not use all of the money to build what he built was like a medical center. And Kamla Kosad Bisesa decided, I'm not going to put it across the highway. And people that catch the royal backside to go there, but they won't talk about that. I said it before already. Ask a taxi driver how much it will cost you to take a taxi from Cuba to go by that so-called children's hospital that we're still paying for, that Kamla Kosad didn't pay 1 cent for. They won't talk about these things. You understand? We're not talking about Robert Amar. Robert Amar, the second caller was quite correct. But all he said about Bolan Amar and Robert Amar. Robert Amar blew his father's business out of the water. A good business. Because anybody who drove a Royal Saloon, as the second caller said, you knew it was a status something. A Royal Saloon or a Super Saloon. You understand? It was a status something identified many years ago. And when Robert took it over from Bolan Amar, that was the end of the business and the family empire. That's why he had to go and talk to be a journalist all of a sudden because he lies and he is corrupt and he hates the PNM. So when he comes and he talks about things about that PNM has only spent and UNC that saved, they have spent some money that saved. But when Joanna Ramaran said they only had 3 days' money and the exchequer was overdrawn by $23 billion and NGC couldn't pay any Christmas bonuses for the first time ever to the workers. I want to know what that money was used for. But you see, they have forgetfulness in the brain. You understand? Piaco could never finish it. Going on 25 years. And we're still waiting for that case, that great corruption case that was described to finish like bubbling quiz. I believe it was. You're still waiting for it to finish in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. But he ain't going to talk about that. And the 2 little imps on that program ain't going to talk about that. And it hurts me to see these 2 fellas and what they support. These fellas are totally brainless, I believe. But there's more to say, but it's getting late. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chance, call me back. Anne-Marie Montique says right now PNM is getting up for party group elections. You're most welcome, Malka. Let me see. So, Take Mr. Chance. Mr. Chance. Hello? Hello? Mr. Chance. Hello? I don't know, Mr. Chance was listening to the... Hello, good afternoon. Hello?
Hello, good afternoon, Dominic.
Yes, sir.
Dominic, I see Mr. Amar as he come out that studio. He start making cool out of them too, you know, because Amar supposed to know, asking what does this government do? We used to travel from Silot, the helicopter is Amoko. I was present, you know, this is fact, you know, overrun Padma, turn the sun. On the pre-field, we used to travel from Radix in the center, the coconut. It didn't have no Galeota. They nearly leveled down San Fernando Hill to build Galeota Point. Oil from the East Coast was almost sulfur-free. It never passed through the land because it could make nothing if you bring it to the refining point of view. So I work from on the free field to the teak field, to the salmon field, to cactus, to balata, and develop this country. So I don't know what he said. He matched up a whole empire. Although you saw we suffering, you had to put on your name, and it had a bribe to get a Toyota.
Wow.
And the Japanese garden, well, you know, the Calypsonian documents everything. Go up on that. You go see it.
Thank you, sir. I think I'll have to look into this Japanese garden thing. Mr. Chance. Come back. This is the first I've heard about this Japanese garden. Ruben says tomorrow, so Sheila will turn 72. Oh, okay, tomorrow is her birthday. All right. Mr. Chance. Give me a call back. Eileen says if the children's hospital was open, how the incident of the babies dying would not happen. Exactly. I mean, the nonsense that they talk sometimes, it's mind-blowing. But anyways, a good thing the government knew what they were doing, why they didn't open the Cuba hospital, which is why it was available to treat COVID patients. They won't talk about anything. But anyway. Right. Let me see. Hello? Hello?
Hello, good afternoon, Dominic.
Yes, sir. Greetings.
Yeah, greetings, special greetings. Another very interesting discourse touching very many areas.
Yes.
But I just want to attach my contribution to what Brian said. I want the UNC to know that we can chew gum and whistle. You understand?
Yes.
They believe that they could do things to distract us, to sell red herring. When last we saw the opposition leader coming and address the people in the media, Madam, I'm not going to talk very long on this, you know. I just want you to know that we could chew gum and whistle. I just want you to know that you could run, but you can't hide. I just want you to know that sometimes in a game of all fours, you're throwing out things to attract us. But no, we have the ace in the hole waiting for you, madam. We have it. We have not forgotten what Brian spoke about, the rotten political party. And that is not only today, no. That same UNC, my friends on this live, have had several reincarnations, you know. That is in their DNA. That crumbling, stumbling, fumbling, bumbling, cracking, rotting UNC. In 1953, it was called the PDP, run by Badi Sagan Mirage. In 1957, it was called the DLP, the Democratic Labour Party. In 1966, the Workers and Farmers Party. All that the same UNC, you know. All of that. In 1976, it was called the Social Labour Democratic Party. In 1976, it was called the United Labour Front by Panley. In 1988, Club 88. And on the 24th of April, 1989, in UNC. You see how many incarnations? You know why they have all those incarnations? Because all the time you had thieving, bumbling, crumbling leadership. I mean, the entire party was so consumed with nastiness and thieving and bacchanal and confusion that they had to change names to fool the people. So, madam, we know we will discuss all the things about the babies. Harrowing, sad, unfortunate, heart-wrenching, we do all of that. But, madam, we are not going to allow you to turn that into a political dynamic. We are not going to allow you to distract us from what is happening in the bowels of the UNC. And we know, why we know that, we will keep an eye on this, that an international Reuters report tells us between 2027 and 2030, there will be a significant increase in production of natural gas in this country. That means for us, the people of this country, significant increased revenue. What we are going to put to take care of that billions and billions of money from 2027 to 2050. That is the big picture Brian spoke about there. That is the big picture. Are we going to take this fumbling, crumbling, rotting UNC? Are we going to put the cat to watch the cheese, the butter of the rat? That is the decision we have to make. But based upon all the discussions I've heard this morning, and many of the discussions I'm hearing on the public radio, it appears as though our people are seeing the light. They are not going to be fooled by distractions and red herrings. You're going to talk about it, yes. But, madam, we can whistle and chew gum at the same time. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Right, so that's my last call for today, but I just saw a headline that I felt I wanted to touch on. EU comes out in support of dragon gas. In the face of the US reimposing sanctions on Venezuela's energy sector this week, the European Union remains steadfast in its interest and potential support for dragon gas pipeline between Venezuela and TNT, while the EU ambassador to TNT, Peter Cavendish, signaled the group's willingness to support the project. Hungary's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Peter Szijjártó, said his country is willing to see the implementation of the 90-kilometer pipeline between both countries when Hungary assumes the presidency of the European Union in July. In a statement to The Guardian, Cavendish said the European Union is, of course, very interested in diversifying its sources of energy, and in this context, the possible support to the exploitation of the Venezuelan gas field is of great interest. The European Union does not have a final position on any support. However, we are willing to look positively to the proposals. Speaking to the Sunday Business on Wednesday during a brief visit to TNT, the Szijjártó said the European Union has made important decisions to include two of Trinidad and Tobago's major projects into its Global Gateway program. The first is the 90-kilometer long submarine pipeline, and the second is to make TNT's petrochemical industry greener and more environmentally protected. And the implementation of these two agreements will be started throughout our presidency term, and we are committed to support you in the successful implementation of these two projects and to make sure the European Union will support will be there for the entire length of these projects. So we have then all the European Union pledging its support for the dragon gas, and when Hungary assumes presidency of the European Union in July, they have committed to make that one of their foremost projects that they will be focusing on to promote that, if it means that they're going to be using diplomatic channels to assist Trinidad and Tobago with respect to overtures to Washington, to perhaps grant the 15-year license that is being requested so that Shell can make the next step in making the final investment decision. So good news there for us. We have support. But let's see what Kevin Hamline will have to say about that. Folks, thank you so much for joining me today. Always a pleasure. Went over a little bit, but so many things to discuss, and there's still a couple of other topics that I didn't get to touch on, but we will treat with that on Tuesday, God's willing. Yeah, so enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Veronica says, in relation to Kabla's birthday, she born. I thought she happened. You and a lot of people probably thinking that. Oh, Lord, my goodness. I tell you. Cheryl, you can just message me at 7701763. Send me a WhatsApp now. Cheryl Bishop. Yeah, you can just just send me a WhatsApp message and I'll reach out to you. 7701763. Thank you all so much, folks. Right, let me go see what my kitchen looks like. Yeah, my fridge has, and we'll chat again on Tuesday morning. God's willing. Thank you so much. Yeah, so the only live we'll have next week will be Tuesday because I'm traveling on Thursday, and so I actually leave. My flight is on Thursday morning, so at the time I normally have the live, I will actually be in the airport. So yeah, so most likely after Tuesday, the next live would be possibly on Sunday once I can squeeze it in. Yeah, so but we'll chat again on. Elizabeth says the goose must be flying at Safaria. We're brutal today, folks. We'll chat on Tuesday.